Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special Haggis Hexed Halloween edition of Monster Party.
Monster Party!
Monster Party!
Happy Halloween! Happy
Ooh, trick or
Halloween!
treat.
Happy Halloween!
Oh,
I've
I'm
got
scared.
candy!
I'm
I've got a
wearing-
great costume!
I'm wearing a mask that I got back in the 60s, and it doesn't look anything like what it's supposed to be, but I love it anyway.
Oh, man.
Oh, Halloween. What a
Masks,
good time.
Halloween,
What a great
candy.
season.
Our favorite holiday. Yeah.
It really is. It's my Christmas. It really
Yes.
is.
Speaking of
This
Christmas,
is a holiday invented for us. Let's face it.
That's
Yes.
true. Yeah.
True.
yes,
That's
yes,
true.
mystery guest. But who are you, sir? Who are you?
I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Strothe.
And I'm James Gonis.
And for this episode, we are going to be talking, of course, about Halloween and the things that we like about Halloween and all the different ways we celebrate it, movies we like, just anything Halloween-y that comes into our head.
Well, that's all very interesting, but what is our topic?
Yes.
The topic for tonight's episode is Halloween Hullabaloo.
Halloween Hullabaloo!
Oh, it's a hullabaloo.
It's Halloween, and it's a hullabaloo.
We are hullabalooing it. But
Yes.
we needed a Sherpa. You know, we needed
Yes.
someone to guide us through this.
That's right.
Who has a pedigree, who understands Halloween, who's helped shape us, and
That's right.
has given us so much joy in his creations. And
Monsters,
we looked all over.
creatures.
We looked all over.
Looked high and low.
And nothing for years, nothing. And then all of a sudden, boom, it happened.
That's right.
And Shawn, maybe you could give us a little more information about this.
Yes, I will. Well, our guest tonight is a screenwriter, an author, producer, and noted film and TV historian. He's written comic books and graphic novels, including Dinosaurs Attack, Bram Stoker's Death Ship. He's written several books on genre films and TV, including the groundbreaking TV guidebook, Fantastic Television. Very appropriately for Halloween, he co-wrote the script for the classic 80s monster film Pumpkinhead.
Oh, yeah.
Also the screenplay for the 90s film version of Vampirella.
Ooh la la.
Yes. He's worked with Topps Trading Cards Company for trading card sets based on Star Wars, Jurassic Park, and many others. He's done numerous Blu-ray commentaries on notable genre films and TV shows. And he is a true fellow monster kid. Please, guys, welcome Gary Gerani.
Gary Gerani!
Gary Gerani.
Hello there.
Welcome.
Nice to be here, folks.
Welcome,
Man.
sir.
I feel very much at home with you guys.
Yes, thank you.
I can tell right away, we're all part of the club.
That's
Sure.
right.
I mean,
And
we
for
look at each
listeners-
other's backgrounds
Yes.
and,
Yes.
Yeah, right. That
the
tells you
telltale
everything.
collectibles.
For listeners,
Or your attire, right?
Yes.
it's
Attire,
the
right.
Yes,
that
monster
kind of
shirts.
stuff.
Yes, everything.
Gary
yes.
has some of the coolest monster stuff that we can see in his place.
That's
and
right.
it's like he is a kindred spirit. I'm so excited to have him here.
And
I see a she creature. I see some
Gorgo. Yeah.
Gorgo. I also see, I believe, some Haunted Mansion bus. Yes.
Oh, you know what else you see
Oh,
there?
hey.
Oh.
I am
Oh,
saying,
you got Frankenstein bust. You got that's awesome.
I am
Look at the
saying-
Predator thing. Wait, go back. The Predator thing.
You want to go back
Oh
to that?
my, you know what? God, oh my gosh, folks, this is just so cool.
Wow. Hey,
Yeah,
Gary, we'll all be over in an hour.
yeah.
Okay, well.
But
Hey,
so Gary-
listen, sure, drop by anytime. I love to give people a tour of my
Sure,
my
absolutely.
collection.
Right.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Likewise.
Well, so I want to start, Gary, by finding out, we all have our stories of how we got into monsters and horror growing up. I kind of want to know what your main inspirations were and how you got into this whole genre of horror and sci-fi.
Yeah, I basically have your, I guess, standard early 1960s monster kid kind of background. Okay, I
Mhm.
was born in 53.
Okay.
So by the time you got to like my earliest memories of going to the movies and things like that around 59. Okay. So
Okay.
I was right there when Famous Monsters first came out.
Yep. Yep.
And I was in that first wave. And originally I was a kid who was interested in dinosaurs, the reality, because I lived in Brooklyn, and going to the Museum of Natural History wasn't that big a deal. So my parents would always take me. They loved the fact that I was interested in something that was scientific, and meanwhile they were these great looking creatures.
Yeah, real life monsters. Right.
Then when I decided, that kind of rolled over into the movie monsters and all that. My parents were a little less enthused about it. I said, well, the other thing was a little more respectable, but okay. And I got lost in the pages of Famous Monsters. And you got to remember, in 1959 and 1960, most of those incredible, iconic monsters that we had, the mole people and this and that, whatever, we hadn't seen those movies. They hadn't come on television yet. So you would get an issue of Famous Monsters and open it up, and it would be page after page of, oh my God, look at this, look at this, look at this. And as the years went on, you then began to see these pictures, which was kind of a thrill. So there was that beginning. And now in the early 60s, of course, you had some TV shows. The Twilight Zone premiered in 1959. That was also a very, very important thing for me because it was a 10 o'clock show on a Friday night. And normally my bedtime was like 9 o'clock after a $1 million movie, after watching King Kong or Godzilla, whatever, at 9 o'clock or so, a weekday, you had to go to bed, right? But luckily, Twilight Zone was on Friday night at 10, so my parents let me stay up. Nice. And that was a major thing for me. And then I also got to stay up and see a little bit of the Boris Karloff thriller series, which was also on at that same time, and One Step Beyond. And then eventually The Outer Limits in 1963, which was on at 7:30, so there was never any problem there. But again, all of those major influences. I mean, meanwhile, in the movie theaters, you had the Edgar Allan Poe, Roger Corman pictures.
Oh, yeah.
You had the earliest, best Hammer films happening. So it was a very, and I didn't get to see most of those on a first run because I was still kind of young and whatever. I caught up with those late, but this was all that era. It was very, very exciting. So there I was, a typical kind of lonely kid. I was an only child, although I will say this, I had a cousin who lived downstairs who was like a big brother, very obnoxious fellow, but he's the one who turned me on to Famous Monsters. And he also turned me on to the imagination. And if you were having problems at home and your parents were arguing and things weren't the greatest in the world, you could escape into your imagination and into all of these different worlds that were being provided for us.
Sure.
So that was significant. The weird thing is, in the 60s, the early 60s was an incredible monster boom period.
Yes.
The Aurora model kits seemed to have kick-started.
Oh, yes. And you had the shock theater.
Interest in the classic characters from the 30s and 40s, which they had just come on television in 57. And most of us kids had, the only one that we had seen was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. That would be on early in the day.
Right.
The classic Universals were usually on later at night, which were kind of tough to see. This was the era where you didn't have VCRs, obviously.
Right.
So if you missed something, it was on too late, man, it might be 6 months until it was on again. Right. And then it might be on too late,
again. Right.
So this was the torture for us. We wanted to see these movies, but the kids today have no idea. I sound like, these young.
I know. We say the same thing though all the time.
The same thing.
But the idea of every Tuesday getting the new TV Guide.
Yes.
Scanning the movie listings.
Circling the ones.
To see if your favorite movie was Revenge of the Creature finally going to be on. And then you would see it listed eventually after years of looking. Oh my God. There was an excitement there that, was unparalleled.
Yeah, it made everything more special. When you had to seek it out, it was like you had to work for it. And it's just
the
not
Wizard
the
of
same.
Oz was on once a year, and that made it special. Now you can see it any time, and it's like, okay, not quite the same.
I know it's not the same. I mean, it's some ways it's good, but in other ways, it's like it takes away that magic a little bit. It really.
As you said, you had to fight for the things you loved. You had to go looking. You had to be the explorer because
Yes.
This hadn't been done before. And as a matter of fact, I would say that the fans from the 60s, we were the ones who were kind of breaking that ground, because our parents, being greatest generation types, they had to deal with a very real world. They had to deal with the Depression. They had to deal with World War II. So this kind of stuff seemed very trivial and childish to them. And from their perspective, I kind of understood where they were coming from. But my generation, and obviously the generations that followed, was the exact opposite. We completely gravitated to anything fantastic.
Embraced it. Yeah.
Well, when you get somebody like Rod Serling with The Twilight Zone, because of his war experiences were horrific. And, you get somebody like that, and he brings fantasy and horror and genre things to storytelling and makes them morality tales. And so now you got a whole new generation that are learning these lessons in a way that's not only palatable, but as your friend downstairs, it sparks your imagination.
Weren't we lucky? Yeah. Weren't we lucky to have Rod Serling as our kind of guide into this world, because he brought with him his intelligence and his education and his humanity. So suddenly it showed everybody that these funky little crazy stories can actually have a strong meaning and a point that's worth, taking seriously. So Rod Serling made it respectable. It's so funny. You got Rod Serling, and then you have Gene Roddenberry 5 years later making science fiction respectable. And I guess you could say you had Stan Lee over at Marvel Comics.
Definitely.
And so this was the era where everyone said, okay, we're going to take this stuff seriously and start to build on it. It's not frivolous. It's actually fantasy, and science fiction is a great way to talk about the human condition. I mean, science fiction, it's built in.
And of course, and Forey Ackerman too just introduced us to so much stuff.
Forey was like our daddy figure. He was out there. He was like saying, it's okay, kids. I'm your Mr. Rogers, so to speak.
He was our Uncle Forey.
Even Famous Monsters was commercially designed to be lowbrow and a lot of puns and whatever. You could tell there was an intelligence underneath it. And then it became a better, more solid kind of, by 63 or so, the typeface was smaller, the articles were denser and had real worth. So even though Forey, people laugh at it, but no. He had the right love for this. And thank goodness, all of these guys, thank God they were there.
Yeah, well, I also wonder too if with Forey and those early Famous Monsters, using the puns and the humor, I wonder if that was also a way of like, if you're a kid and you have this magazine, your parents come across it. It's monsters, but it's like, hey, it's all kind of a joke, and it's real lighthearted, and they might not throw it away.
That's a good point, because what we're really talking about is the relationship between horror and humor in all different ways. And humor, there's a reason why they call this kind of stuff black comedy, and there is something perversely funny underneath all this horror, because it is unreal. And so humor and horror have always tended to kind of orbited each other. It's funny because writing that type of humorous horror stuff is what got me my job at Topps. We're not going to jump into that yet, but just to make a point, I wound up doing that Forey kind of thing pretty constantly with the
products. That's true,
So believe me, I'm saying no. There's a real fun kind of worth to it. But horror and humor do have a very interesting relationship. That's why a show like Kolchak the Night Stalker is loved by fans so much.
Yeah, I've said it many times on this podcast. I think Kolchak is maybe my single favorite TV show of all time.
Everybody loves Kolchak, everybody wants to be Kolchak in a weird way.
Yes, exactly.
I want to be Kolchak in the first TV movie. I want Carol Lindley hanging around.
That's true. So, Gary, talking about writing, like, how did you get into the writing aspect of it?
Okay, here's how that worked. As a kid, sure, I loved all this crazy stuff, but what was I going to do with my life? And I was lucky in that I had artistic talent. So from the earliest age, I could draw all kinds of things, and I remember drawing train tracks, showing, God, he knows what perspective is and all, just by nature. Okay. So everybody just assumed I was going to eventually become an artist. I went to the High School of Art and Design. I was preparing for that as my career. And then at a certain point, at the end of art and design and before college, I kind of realized, God, I think I'm good, but I see so many other people around me who are really, really, really good. It was a lot of fun to be a big fish in a little pond, but out there with these incredible artists, I did feel like, oh, Christ, how am I going to really measure up to that? And then I sold my first piece of writing, and I began to think, oh, this is something you can sell. It's creative. I enjoyed writing. And so maybe I can just move my life into that. To be honest, I never really planned a career. I just kind of followed my nose in the creative things I enjoyed doing. And wherever that would lead me, I'd see where I could make the most of it. So it wasn't like I set out, oh, I'm going to be a screenwriter. I just knew I wanted to create all this cool stuff. And eventually, life kind of pushed me this way and that.
That's awesome.
So it was art that kind of led me to where I was going. But then I sold my first piece, which was to the Monster Times.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah,
I remember Monster Times.
I think that
loved
kind
it.
of set the tone right there, and it was the Confessions of the Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh,
Nice.
Confessions?
Here's classic. This is typical, but classic. I was going to write the article in a very scholarly way, because at that point, that's kind of what you wanted, the respect for the genre.
Sure.
We've been laughing at it too long. That was the big deal back then. But the Monster Times was by design, again, very Forey-like, very cute and funny, and okay. So I sat down with Chuck McNorton, who was the original editor, and we came up and I said, why don't you love the creature so much, become the creature? I said, you may write a first person. So sure enough, it was, hello, boys and girls. For the first 150 million years of my life, I was very happy on the Amazon. And then Hollywood came along. So it was written in that style. And I even gave the creature had an affair with Esther Williams, who was very
No.
and there was all this crazy stuff. And it brought out a sick sense of humor in me that I guess I always knew I had, because I used to amuse my high school friends with crazy little creations that were written and funny and all that. And so it just came very, very natural. And that article was a huge success. And they had me writing Gorgo Speaks, and something was
Gorgo
and then that
Speaks.
eventually wound up being a monthly column as the big G as Godzilla. So I was Godzilla every month, and I was Gary Draw, 2 G's to begin with, so it all seemed to fit. So yeah, and I wrote some other types of articles for the Monster Times as well, but they really loved my style when it came to the funny stuff. And that's what led to me getting my job at Topps. And the first thing they asked me to do was write funny captions for monster movie cards.
Right.
Hi, I'm the new babysitter, and it's Frankenstein monster. Yeah, that.
Right. I love that stuff.
I was completely qualified to do that.
Right. And you're right, very Forey-like,
Yes.
Yeah.
And funny.
So
yeah,
that was my entry, and yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the name of that card line?
Creature
That was a trading
features
card line that I originally worked on for them. They stole the name from the Channel 5 monster movie slot.
Right.
But that's okay. Then I stole the name Shock Theater for the name of a Hammer horror set that I did like 5 years later, and that was a famous Shock Theater, is what they call the classic Universal package.
Right.
When it was
I
were stealing names like crazy. It was a
sure.
I love those monster cards so much. I actually have a whole box of unopened ones. Still,
Nice.
and it still has the gum in it. But
Oh,
it's like
yes.
one of my prides.
Gum, no doubt.
Yes, but one of my prides and joys. I
You can
have
snort it now.
I have well, I have 3 of the original artworks where they I guess back then, they could use the monster, but if there was an actor in it, they couldn't use the face of the actor, so they had to put in some other photo of somebody else. And
I'm so pleased you've said this, because my very first day at Topps, in addition to writing funny captions, I was ushered in a back room and there were some photographers, whatever, and they took my picture. So I doubled for Boris Karloff in one of those cards.
No,
I also doubled for Onslow Stevens in House of Dracula.
Wow, that's so cool.
I was on Gilbert Gottfried's show a number of times, and Gilbert loves Onslow Stevens. Or Gilbert. What can one say?
Rest in
But
peace.
when he heard that, it was like, oh my God. I said, listen, Gilbert, you're one of the few people who even knows what an Onslow Stevens is.
That's right. That's right. Wow.
But I was one of those phony heads that was dropped on it. Yeah, and that was legally. You could print the monsters because theoretically they were under makeup.
They're a character,
But the actors, Julie Adams, let's say, being carried by the creature, it was Julie Adams. So
they couldn't have Julie Adams.
The human faces, right?
Right.
So it's funny.
Gary, please tell me you didn't double Julie Adams' face.
Our cards were funky, but not quite that funky.
That's terrific. I remember all those cards, and you should open them, Larry, because you get a lot of laughs out of them.
Whoa! Well,
whoa! No, can't enjoy them. No,
I have opened cards that are in little sleeves, so they're nice and mint, and then I have this package of them.
Okay, all right.
But it's cool because the original artwork, it has a little cutout of these other people's faces glued onto the image, and then they colored and drew on it to make it look so good, and so those are like prized pieces in my collection.
That's
awesome.
But Gary, I love those. Those are so
it's funny because I wound up creating these things for Topps for the next half a century. So I did a number of additional movie monster cards for them. And when we went back to Creature Features, because this is the 1970s one that you're talking about with the heads dropped in.
Yes.
In the 80s, when we revisited it, I thought I was being very clever. I tried to choose shots that didn't have humans in them. So we didn't have to massacre the image, even though it's kind of funky and fun.
Sure.
Another part of me is just saying, this is now, we've hurt the photo. So I tried to kind of work around that. And then years later, they would clear the rights. You see, in the old days, they didn't bother to clear rights for anything. So if you had say Star Trek, you couldn't, and the way Leaf, I think one of our competitors, had Star Trek in the mid-'60s, a black and white set that they did, they had to make up their storylines. They couldn't, we didn't legally have the right stories that were on the show. That's why you'll have a shot of William Shatner looking very profound, and the caption will be "mindless man," and it will say something like, "He's hit by a rock on an asteroid. Now he's wandering around. Who am I? Whatever." Yeah, it was just a shot of William
That's so funny.
Well, that was kind of a running theme too in those cards. There was a lot of cards I saw that had nothing to do. Outer Limits cards.
The Outer Limits were the most famous, right? Because that was Lem Brown, who also wrote the text for Mars Attacks, and Lem Brown became he was the guy that hired me at Topps, and he said, "Oh my God, another guy like me." Okay, so we became very, very close, and he made up those nutty storylines. Matter of fact, I was having dinner with Joe Stefano, and who produced the Outer Limits, and wrote some of these movies. And I showed him some of those cards, including. It was a great episode that Stefano wrote that was really bizarre, called "Don't Open Till Doomsday."
One of my favorites.
Coolest.
Strange little
was surreal.
in his box. And an alien who lost his way, and it's in the midst of this whatever happened to Baby Jane kind of scenario.
Yeah, Great Expectations a little bit.
Only Joe Stefano would come up with
Yes.
So I showed him the trading card with the creature on it, which Lem Brown called the Brainless Glob. and I was reading this card, and the storyline is the globs are kept as pets by space families, and foreshadowing E.T., one was left behind, And globs live for love and die without it. But people run in horror from the thing, and the poor sad glob dies of a broken heart. And just to find a reason, so this is better than my story.
That's awesome.
Meanwhile, Lem Brown was so embarrassed. You really didn't show him that card.
And Gary, now you also, was it the first run then of the Star Wars trading cards that you did? Which I assume were huge and did really well.
I started at Topps in like 72, 73. So in the early 70s, granted, you did have these creature feature cards, which were popular, and you did have wacky packages, which were popular.
Love that.
My earliest work on wacky packages, before I started to design and write them, they would send me to the supermarket to try to find products that we hadn't parodied yet.
Oh my gosh!
All these things, and that was great too, because we'd set them all up, and there was a whole group of us, and we'd look, and everybody would, how about this? Some guy would come up with the main gag, some else would be the secondary gag, another person would come up with the illustration concept.
Right.
So it was a very interesting thing creating.
That must have been really fun.
I was insane for those.
Wacky packages.
Wacky packages.
Obsessed with them.
Me too.
Obsessed.
So obviously the famous mobsters of Filmland was one I did.
Nice.
Slate text living gloves that are strangled. That was one of mine too.
Great.
Wow.
But the point I was going to make here is that in the early 70s, the way our pop culture was, there really weren't many TV shows or movies that were to our interest. The first concepts I did at Topps were things like the Waltons and Adam 12,
right,
and the Rookies. It's like, where were the kind of shows we liked? It wasn't until the mid to later 70s, very, very specifically, 1977 is the year that changed the world of pop culture. Obviously, that's because that's when Star Wars came out, and everything was turned on its head. Licensing became an entirely different experience. And science fiction and fantasy suddenly became commercial, the thing that everyone wanted to do. So that happened to dovetail with Fred Silverman over at ABC, putting on shows like Happy Days and The $6 Billion Man and Three's Company. And they were like perfect bubblegum properties too. So we had Mork and Mindy. It was all this
Mork
kind
and
of
Mindy.
stuff. Yeah. So you had the movies that Star Wars inspired. Now we were doing Close Encounters and The Black Hole and
Battle Beyond the Stars.
Done like Alien, which was R-rated.
Superman, the first Superman, the first Star Trek film. Those were
that, along with all these TV shows. Welcome Back, Kotter. I mean, oh my God, there were so many of them during that era. So I went from being a guy who was just occasionally doing this kind of stuff that we tried to find work for me to do, to a guy who was suddenly now in charge of the most successful thing they ever had, which was Star Wars. They would fly me out to the coast constantly because we always needed more pictures, more material for later products. Of course, it was one series after another. But yeah, that suddenly turned everything around. Not only for me, but for pop culture in general.
Gary, did you work on the Close Encounters set?
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember distinctly that I collected cards. I collected everything fantasy that came out back then. And I remember being really frustrated because I was looking for cards with Richard Dreyfuss on it from Close Encounters. It's like, was there some licensing issue?
And Richard Dreyfuss considered himself a little too highfalutin for a bubble.
I will never see another Richard Dreyfuss movie ever.
How well did the Duddy Kravitz cards go over?
I know.
How about the Goodbye Girls?
Well, if you look at the Close Encounters cards, it really seems to be like Melinda Dillon's is the main protagonist. Okay, who needs to look at Richard Dreyfuss anyway, right? We did have the aliens, and we did have the mothership, right? I think.
Right?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, well, now the mystery from when I was 12 is now solved.
There you go.
Well, I think segueing from that, Gary, the book that I think we all have or have now is 1977 Fantastic Television. And for me at the time, the whole concept of like an episode guide to a TV show. Oh, there you go. That's it.
This is my original copy, which is like falling apart. As
Oh
you
my
can
gosh.
see.
Wow.
I think mine is too.
And-
But
And that's the way it should be. It should be loved. It should,
right. But the idea of just a guidebook that would give you a little synopsis of every episode of shows that were all genre shows. I mean, everything from Star Trek.
And there's a story behind that too. My late writing partner, Mark Carducci, the fellow I did Pumpkinhead with, we were Brooklyn pals as kids. And I lived in Bensonhurst. He lived in Bay Ridge, and that was a bus ride away. So we'd wait on a stoops, as the bus would come across the street, waiting for his bus to go. Well, let that one go by. Let me keep talking about stuff as friends would. And we would play a game called Remember the One. Remember the one with Agnes Moorehead fighting little aliens? Remember the one?
Yeah.
That was at a time, like we're saying, where you couldn't find a listing of all these
There's
things
nothing like
anywhere,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I said, this needs to go between two covers, folks, you know. And
Yes.
Remember the One kind of really said, yeah, I mean, this is crazy. I should really do a book like this. Someone should.
Right.
So sooner or later, someone was going to do a book called... But the nice thing about Fantastic Television, I actually think, was that it's all fantastic. It's not just Star Trek and sci-fi, but it's Boris Karloff's thriller, and it's sci-fi, horror, and fantasy. It's all of the above.
Yes.
Yep.
And I wanted it to be thought of as a genre, fantastic. The original title was called The Fantastic on Television. And I said, no, Fantastic Television says it right there.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of related, you know. It was all the stuff I grew up with. And that stuff from the 60s particularly is just really powerful. I mean, they never leave you. The Outer Limits never goes away. Star Trek never goes away.
Yeah.
Gary, at that time, there weren't the resources that we have today for getting that kind of information. Was it a challenge to get all of those?
Did you have to watch all these episodes? Or how did you do that?
In some cases, it was easy in that sometimes you'd get very lucky, and the syndicators of these TV shows would have syndication kits. And sometimes those syndication kits would provide writer, director, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Sometimes they wouldn't. And then sometimes you didn't have anything like that. So I remember I would have people in other cities watching shows on TV and taking down credits for me.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Cool.
That's amazing.
Somehow I managed to kind of get everything I needed. But
We would have done that for you.
Right.
Yeah. But the thing is, like now, the idea of an episode guide is like everywhere. I mean, there's a magazine called Epilogue, which came out like in.
I remember.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so I mean, now it's just a common thing, and like, of course,
you
there's
just
episode
go
guides.
on the IMDb. And look up a show. You got all the episodes, the air dates, everything. Yeah.
But I mean, I would have that book with me all the time, especially with me in front of the TV all the time, and it made me also seek out shows too.
Right.
It was kind of
A
indispensable.
lot of people use that as a checklist for movies, TV episodes they were recording. I got this one. I got that one.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Gary, you make an interesting point about, well, you know, today you could just go on IMDb. And the funny thing is, a lot of people today go, I'll just go on IMDb. But the thing about a book, the thing about your book is, as you go through to find your information, you're introduced to other things that you don't realize, you don't think about. That's the benefit of something like a guide like your book that you can't really get with an IMDb exactly. And that's what I love about these types of reference books.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
much like practical effects, unless I can hold it, it doesn't feel like it's real. I love a book. You know, I like smelling pages. I like, you know, to see the grain in the photo.
You bring that up because I also was raised during the era where you want the physical, real book, and I've done a number of them, and I really love that. Although now I was recently doing, you know, a couple of things. I'm thinking, you know, this could just work as an ebook, and it's referenced. It's you know, the information is there. It will be cheaper and easier and get to the person more directly. But again, I'm dealing with that whole idea that there is this unconscious need to physically own. And if it's signed by someone, so much the better, you know?
Oh, right.
Yeah, of course.
I love having a book signed.
Yeah.
Love it.
When did you first start writing like for Hollywood, for scripts and things? Like, did you write some spec scripts at first? Like, what was?
I owe all of whatever success or whatever you want to call it I had doing film work to Mark Carducci. You see, I was busy creating my stuff and doing my thing. Mark was focusing a bit more on film writing, and he had sold a script called Neon Maniacs.
Oh yeah,
Sure, know it well.
Yeah.
Neon Maniacs, let me tell you something. The original Neon Maniacs screenplay is a work of genius.
Really?
And I read this script from Mark, my friend, and right away I'm just jealous as hell. But at the same time, I'm just going, oh my God. The original script, first of all, it was set in Brooklyn, and it has a Verrazano bridge, and it has that Saturday Night Fever ambiance, which made all the difference in the world. So Mark's script had the reality of Brooklyn, more like The Warriors, it was really
Sure.
an East Coast thing. And then it got compromised every step of the way. But there was so much imagination he did with those maniacs, with those characters who were just like id monsters, basically. So they could be anything.
Right.
And I thought it was great. That's a script that needs to be remade correctly. Yeah.
Okay.
But there's my Neon
I still
Maniacs.
enjoy the movie. This
He had sold that, so he was kind of slightly had a toe in the business, and he had a meeting with these guys one day and came to me and said, Gar, why don't we resurrect our Demon of Revenge idea that we had played with in the 70s? Pumpkinhead started life with two projects that we had done. One was Hell Mountain, the other was The Seven Gargoyles of Satan. And Mark actually started making a film that had our Demon of Revenge in it. And we used the Creature from the Black Lagoon mask to stand in for the demon. And we put kind of a black veil or something over, whatever we did to make it look a little more supernatural. And that film never got made. We did a little of it and then ran out of money, and that was that.
Sure.
Right.
But then years later, when these guys, Billy Blake and the Pumpkinhead people, came to Mark and said, hey, we'd like to do a horror movie. We know you're a horror guy. And we bought a title for it called Pumpkinhead. It's a poem that we bought from Ed Justin. And we'd like you, Mark, to come up with some kind of storyline to fit the name Pumpkinhead. So
Nice.
Mark comes to me, tells me all this. And we say, okay, what about our Demon of Revenge? And we'll make him a backwoods Terminator, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the evolution of Pumpkin. That was not our name. He was simply a Demon of Revenge. Everything else was kind of what he was, very Lovecraftian. I find it interesting that the Creature from the Black Lagoon became the prototype for Pumpkinhead in a roundabout way.
Well,
Because
yeah,
another head-to-toe rubber creature, right?
Right.
I mean,
Full body
but
suit.
it's amazing because that movie still holds up so well, and it's really like an EC comic story translated to the screen. It really is an iconic 80s monster. It's a great monster.
we were very, very, very lucky. It could have been, I'm not putting anybody down, but it could have been just another Charles Band, or just like a
Sure.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sure.
Charles Band has done some incredible horror movies.
Yes,
Sure,
he has.
but no, we know
But
what you're
I
saying.
get what you're getting at.
Another
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
those, and when Stan Winston got involved,
Yeah.
it's suddenly, and then he had just shot Second Unit on Aliens. So
Right.
we were now in the winner's circle with the
big time.
people making
Oh.
movies like this. That
Right.
also resulted in us getting a creature that looked like he inhabited a bigger budgeted world than our
Yes.
little movie.
Yes.
So and then the best thing of all, we sat down with Stan Winston and we discussed at length what we wanted out of this story. And I remember us saying things like, it's like an indifferent god's overview of a tragic event. Don't make it moist. Make it dry. Make it like you're observing, almost documentary style, what happens here. An objective eye. And the pathos and all of that will play out, but it won't get overly annoying or whatever. It'll
Right.
still be Stan Winston's dry eye kind of covering this event as if he's God. And he is, okay, just looking step by step by step, right up until the ending, the dark ending. Stan, I think we were lucky because that was part of his personality too.
Right.
He got it. It was almost like make it very serious and straight and don't give in to melodrama. You're going to have a man losing his son. It's very easy for, but no. Like I say, we were distanced emotionally. And that, I think, is the secret as to why people still like it. Their emotions are affected, but it's operating on this darker, indifferent level.
Yes, I mean I think one of the taglines for the film is like it's a horror fable. It's like a fable. It's like a Grimm's fairy tale, and
a little morality play. Everybody is guilty over something. I mean, obviously Ed Harley has got all this guilt and that motivates things, but all the other characters are guilty. The little boy who takes Ed Harley to the witch feels guilty of what he said. So we tried to have that trickle down to everybody. That was kind of lightning in a bottle. When Stan tried to do an E.T. kind of movie, which was his next film, A Gnome Named Norm or Upworld, whatever he wound up calling it, that was wrong for him. He was not Mr. Cuddly.
Right.
But he was perfect for the dry in a good way flavors of Pumpkinhead. I mean, so we got lucky with his expertise as a monster maker, although it was really Tom and Alec who created.
Tom Woodruff. Right.
And then they became great people on their own.
Right.
But Stan rose to the occasion as a director, and he got it.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Yeah, Lance Henriksen being the avatar for that whole message and that whole story, and being stoic the way that he always is.
Perfect casting.
Perfect for that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and then the general tone of the movie, which, yes, it's a fable, but it's also done so seriously. There's not a camp feel to it.
No.
And that was a thing that was common around that time. And this is tragic. This is tragic.
Exactly.
And from the very beginning, I'm emotionally invested.
Most of the 80s movies, even the great 80s horror films, are kind of winking at you. They've got that funny little Fright Night or whatever it is, and they're all great. But Pumpkinhead is totally straight, dry. I think the only humor in it is when the little dog sticks his head out of the treasure chest when Pumpkinhead's looking around the house, and you just see his head come up. But everything else is as grim as we could make it.
Yes.
Right?
I think you got lucky, just the fact that everybody is great in the film. I mean, the acting, all the kid actors are great and natural, and all the the guilty parties are all lined up to get killed, but they're all distinguished. They can distinguish.
I'll tell you. I mean, the scene that instantly says, "Oh my God, this is a different kind of movie," clearly is when the little boy is hit by the bike, and all the young people are gathering around him that are responsible, kind of, our characters, and they're in this state of frenzy. No. What are we gonna do? No. Maybe I don't know. And all of a sudden, it goes from typical, what might be thought of as typical 80s teenagers and horror movies. Right. It almost becomes like an Ingmar Bergman film. It becomes like totally like The Virgin Spring or something, where an innocent is killed, and all of a sudden, the way they're acting and the way they're shot, it's from Mark and I said, "Oh my God, look how great this is! Look how it suddenly got real." Right. And that's telling the audience this is a better kind of movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And look at the incredible photography that we have.
Oh my God,
it's shot so well.
I mean,
another area where we just got so lucky.
Yeah.
Talk about the amount of money that was spent on the film to what you get on the screen. It just blows me away. And I was listening to some of the commentary today, and you guys were talking about, the inside of the witch's cabin, which is just like another world. And then you've got the church that has these beautiful, Mario Bava shadows, and it's just, it's glorious. So cool that you mentioned Mario Bava. One of the things that I told Stan is, give us Deliverance during the day and Mario Bava at night. Perfect. We all understood the references. So when we were talking about that scene in the church, which is a great scene, I remember telling Mark, let's have a burned out church that they can just hide in, throw a monster off the scent, so we get some information out that we need to have out. It'd be a great location, right? Well, the church that they found, the burned out set thing, that whatever it was, looked great. And when Pumpkinhead appears in the doorway, it was like, okay,
the thing from another world in the doorway, silhouetted.
Yes,
So
yeah.
we knew, we understood what we were stealing from. But we were doing it in a way that was kind of different and beautiful in its own way.
Yeah.
But we all got the reference.
It's that monster kid language that you all spoke.
Right.
Also, though, I love the moment. One of my favorite moments is when Pumpkinhead is approaching the cross. And you think he's going to flinch from the cross.
Yeah.
He picks it up and laughs at it and destroys it. That's fantastic. That gives the monster some personality too, which I loved. I mean,
that whole bit of business in the church. First of all, the two greatest shots in the film to me, one of them is right there in the church when the camera, the kids are coming out at the end, and then the camera is slowly going back as we're following him all the way through. And it's beautifully done. And of course, he sees the cross and he snarls at it, and it's like, oh yeah, whatever. So yeah, once again, he even picks up the cross and smashes it.
Right. I love it.
People have asked me, so I've said, what happened to that church? Did they try to start a congregation or whatever? But the Hill people were too super. I said, we never really got into. We just said they tried to start something, and the people didn't support it, and so that you have this burned out church. But
maybe it was Pumpkinhead.
We'll begin to find extra meanings in this. Like, no,
right? No, but it was just the right level of information, and you leave certain things to a little mystery to expand in your own mind of what that is. It's a lean and mean film that works so well.
And I also got to give major props to Tom Woodruff. Holy hell. I mean, this time before Doug Jones, who we love, but this is a guy who gets in that suit and just brings it alive. And these scenes where the creature's just walking. And once again, in the commentary, you guys are talking about, well, now this would be CGI and it would be terrible. And it would be a whole
and it wouldn't resonate.
No.
CGI could enable you to do anything, but we've been spoiled. We've been turned off by it now. It's so interesting how that happens.
I think we've been conditioned by it. Now it's like when you see the dinosaurs, there's something about it. It's not real. But to actually see, like in Pumpkinhead, when you see him walking and stuff, there's something when you see him, stepping around or stuff. It's real. By the way,
let's talk about Pumpkinhead walking. It's funny because he had these leg extensions.
Yeah.
So if you see the whole monster from head to toe, he's got these kind of like satyr-like, weird legs.
Yeah.
Well, Stan originally designed that for the Predator, and then realized, no, the Predator's too much of an action character. He's got to jump and land. Those things are too whatever. So he saved that for Pumpkinhead. But when we first saw it, all of us in some of the test footage, Pumpkinhead seemed more like a marionette because it was a tall creature and there were strings holding him up. And when he walked with the extensions, it almost seemed a little too fragile, a little too spindly, so it just wasn't right. So if you watch the movie, you'll notice you never see him walking on those feet. When he enters the church, look closely. We remove the leg extensions. And those are just his legs without those extensions trudging through. Now, there are a couple of shots where you see the full thing with the proper legs, like when he's shish kebabbing the guy, whatever. You can see the full figure there, but you never will see him walking on those extensions. And thank goodness no one really notices.
It's called just good film, good direction and good filmmaking. I mean, you can make... If it was like a 90s movie with like CGI, the CGI would already be dated. But this is like from the 80s, and it's a physical guy in a real suit, and it still holds up perfectly. That's the difference.
Another great thing about what was done here, Stan was really smart. He was very heavily influenced by Ridley Scott's approach to Alien, which means that you can see the creature, but make sure that each and every shot that you have of the creature is carefully planned out and it lasts on screen just the short amount of time. So when you cut away, it remains in your mind and it looms really large. So it's not the old keep the camera on the monster forever and it looks
right.
Like the Alien shots were carefully thought out. And boy, that makes a difference, especially when you see some of the sequels where, he's just a rubber monster. And I love rubber monsters as much as anybody.
Sure.
I can see the difference in that first film and how it was approached.
Right.
Once again, Tom Woodruff inhabits this creature and every movement seems real.
Yeah, he has a real talent for that.
He really does. Yeah.
He played like the raptors in the first Jurassic Park. He played the alien, and I mean, he's always doing this kind of thing, and it always works.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Nice, really nice guy. By the way, both Tom and Alec are great guys. Great guys.
Well, and that's another thing too, is it seems like on that shoot, from every perspective, from the actors to everybody who worked on it, their relationship with each other to their relationship with Stan, that it was just a really great shoot. Like everybody was there to do their job, respectful, but also Stan Winston also knew when to lighten the mood. And it was like, it was a really copacetic environment.
Yeah. No. Everybody was on the same page, and everyone was doing their best work. It was a little story, but it had something. And everybody involved sort of caught that,
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes
that's the best, just a simple but good story. I mean, it doesn't have to be super complex all the time. It can be like a fable, like a great little, spooky story.
I mean, let's face it, from a commercial standpoint, you had to deliver a scary movie with teenagers getting killed. So
right.
Do your best to kind of put it together in a way where it's funny. Some of the things that we were influenced by that we either adapted or changed. The witch, Haggis, originally, we had written her as a little bit more normal. We were making use of the whole idea of a witch being a little seductive. I don't mean sexually seductive, but being a little sly in how she's manipulating a victim, right? Very close to the wonderful hour episode of The Twilight Zone, Jezebel, that Earl Hamner wrote.
With Anne Francis.
Yes.
Jeanette Nolan plays a witch who is it? Anne Francis wants the love of somebody, and so this love potion turns her into a panther at night, or whatever was going on.
Right.
But the ambiance of that, because he really knows he came from that country world, Earl Hamner. I even approached Earl Hamner to write The Ballad of Ed Harley. And he really liked the movie. So I said, look, we were just a couple of kids from Brooklyn. You were the real deal.
Yeah.
But the influence with the witch, ultimately, Stan said, you've written a very interesting character, but let's rethink this and just make her the cliche of the witch, in a sense, spouting one sick thing after another, and have it just be that kind of witch, rather than a witch that might get chummy with you and conversational and trick you. This one, just, you want this? You got to do that. You want that? You got to do that. And once we went in that direction, Haggis suddenly became kind of an interesting monster in herself.
Yes, absolutely.
Real now. It was really like a great Halloween witch.
Yeah.
The minute he walks in the door, she knows she's got him.
Right.
Well, I think there's some little bit like when he walks in with the body of the boy and afraid raising the dead is beyond my powers. Even there's a little trace of wise ass in there. There's a little that's still left.
Dare I say too soon?
Right. No, it is fantastic. It's a perfect
Another
movie.
Significant change that was better for the movie. In the original script and what was filmed, the kids, the young people in the story, aren't introduced on the road the way they are now, which works beautifully because you've got Lance Henriksen telling his son this fairy tale. And then one day, who comes into town as the fairy tale takes into the next level, right? Well, in the original version, we meet all the young people at a diner, okay? And it reveals a little bit more about their characters. And there's a scene of them talking in the diner. You get a sense of Joel being kind of a pain in the ass, all that kind of stuff. And then they walk out of the diner, and it's windy, and the wind is whipping the girls' hair down. Beautiful shots. This stuff was filmed, but was cut at the last minute. And it was a rare case where me, as the writer, said, it's good that it's cut, because by removing that scene, it makes it clear that this is Ed Harley's story. They are supporting characters. They're not really interesting enough on their own that we want to spend that much. No, they're just part of this story about this man and his son and what happens here. Yeah, they eventually play their part, but I think that was such a smart move because it really makes it clear now it's Ed. Well, we have the flashback at the beginning. It should be very clear this is his story.
Right.
And since this is our Halloween episode, for listeners, if you haven't had the chance to see Pumpkinhead, I'd strongly suggest you check it out, because
Perfect Halloween movie.
It is a perfect Halloween movie, and like what's been said here, it's not exactly your typical 80s horror film, and it's just terrific.
Yeah, it
And
really
it
just stand out.
moves. That's the other thing too. It hits the ground running, and next thing you know, it's like, whoa, it's over. Wait a minute, like it's so economical with everything that it does. And you were just describing that scene. I mean, I agree. I think coming in on those kids right when they do, it provides everything that you need to know about them.
Right.
Through their acting and just their behavior, you learn who they are.
Right.
And the minute that accident happens, they're all real people in trouble.
Yes.
So it isn't like I say, a typical 80s movie where there's the slickness where the young people are fighting this or that. No. This is real people who found themselves in a horrible situation. And they were good enough, all of them. Well, yeah, they were good actors. You know, they were all good.
Yeah, they're all really good.
John D'Aquino went on to do other things.
Yeah, he's great. He's such a
And the other fellow
bastard
was
in that
the
movie.
original Clark Kent and Superman when he was a young man.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, they're all really good.
They were all pretty solid. And the actress who plays our female lead, the young girl, I thought she was quite wonderful.
Yes.
She has a lot of emoting to do, particularly at the end. Like, can't you stop this? Can't you call it off? You know, and she's very convincing.
Yeah.
Carrie Remsen?
Yeah, and she's not overly beautiful. The way, you know, like
they're like real people. They're like
but
real.
Again, it doesn't have the phoniness of a slick Hollywood.
It's not like it doesn't feel like another I Know What You Did Last Summer sequel. You know? So Gary, coming from that film, which was truly lightning in a bottle, maybe this movie wasn't lightning in a bottle, but it's maybe interesting in other ways. I'm really curious about your stories about, this was from the 90s, Jim Wynorski directed a film called Vampirella. Now,
Vampirella.
Now, first, I wanted to know if, since growing up on Famous Monsters, I assumed you were a big Vampirella fan and reader of the magazine at the time.
Yep. And I owned a lot of the original art from Jose Gonzalez.
Wow.
Incredible people. And that was, again, great art I had in my house that I eventually sold because I needed money. That's the way things go.
Of course.
Sure.
But yeah, no, so I became particularly interested in Vampirella, the comic book magazine, when it became a little bit more sophisticated. And when Forey created it, it was kind of a funky little takeoff on Barbarella and Queen of Blood and, whatever. But then eventually it took on they began to embrace Lovecraft in the storylines of the Vampirella. And I was very, very, very much into Lovecraft. Plus, she was just such a beautiful, sexy lady.
Yes.
Just wearing these ribbons like a naked, gorgeous woman walking around. How you looked at it.
Yeah, how could you not? It's everything you want.
Everything plucked from real life.
Right.
Now, so I was interested in writing a Vampirella script, and I wrote it. This was during that whole era. I guess it was in the early '90s at this point. And the script got around, got great reader reports. Tim Burton really liked it, was going to do something, and then it just kind of, I don't know what happened, but then it wound up just with Roger Corman and then Jim, and all of a sudden, so many of the things that made the script so cool couldn't be filmed.
Right. But I know that, like, the history of the character, because I know that for years Hammer Studios wanted to do it. I mean, there's talk about Caroline Munro and Valerie Leon doing.
We had the famous Barbara Lee on our show with Joe.
We had Barbara Lee. Yeah, and she talked about how the
Michael Carreras.
The attempts to make the movie version never panned out.
Yeah, Hammer was playing around, because I could remember being at the Hammer convention in New York years earlier. And she came on stage, and they showed her in her costume, and
beautiful.
And I guess Peter Cushing would have played Pendragon.
Great, perfect.
Yeah, amazing.
He was old enough that he fit the part at that point.
Yes.
It was Archie Goodwin, who was a brilliant fantasy and fiction writer and comic book writer and all of this, who turned Vampirella around from a joke in the comics to something that had serious Lovecraftian occult concepts. So when I wrote my script, the idea, and this was all Archie's idea, that vampirism was really a contagion from another world.
Yeah, I love that.
And that Dracula, the most famous vampire, had come to this planet from his home world, Draculon. He simply took the name of his home planet. That's where Dracula came from. And he's the one that came here ages ago and started the contagion on Earth. Vampirella is chasing him. And I've actually forgotten where Archie's ideas end and where mine begin, because I just kind of melded everything together. But I wanted that whole notion of vampirism being something from the stars, and that was such a different spin on Dracula. Right. And because it was based on a comic book, you could get away with somewhat more far-fetched ideas like that. It all kind of works. And then ideas like the face on Mars, because we had Vampy was waylaid on Mars. That's why he got there first, spread the contagion. Then ages later, she's found and resumes her, pursuit of him.
Right.
So yeah, all those ideas, the Lovecraft ideas that Archie kind of brought into it, that I then jumped on and developed. There's even a scene in Vampirella, the movie, where she's chained up. Her bloodlust is going to overtake her, and Adam Van Helsing, who is her ally, is going to be her victim. Oh no! Right. But she's chained up, and I think the gimmick was just drink enough to keep you alive, and it was like some kind of, and that entire bit of business, shot by shot, I based completely on a classic Vampirella story.
Oh, nice.
Death's Dark Dominion or something like that. One of the early great Vampirella stories, shot by shot. I even used some of the dialogue from that comic.
Nice.
Which nobody picked up on.
But Gary, because this was a Roger Corman production, it was obviously scaled down to be a small budget. I mean, once it was a go with that budget, did you just have to trim and revise scenes?
I had to revise tons of stuff. The original ending took place in a museum of natural history and a planetarium, because these characters have been here for the whole history of the Earth. So the natural history thing made perfect sense and great things to work with. And the planetarium, since they came from the stars. And eventually Vlad was going to be done in with the artificial sunlight of the planetarium thing. It was a whole different idea.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Jim says, no. Give me the ending of Scars of Dracula. Have him raise up the thing, gets hit by... And I'm going, but Jim, they already did that. I know, but we got use of the dam here, because it was shot out.
Right.
That great Hoover Dam, whatever the hell it is. So all the imagination, everything that I put into the climax had to be rewritten to do an imitation of the Scars of Dracula finale.
Oh my gosh! But I can see, watching the movie, I can see how it's so much more ambitious than its budget. I mean, there's even that script as it is. If it was done like on a Marvel Universe budget, like it could be this amazing, spectacular horror, sci-fi, fantasy action movie. Yeah. Like there's a lot of ambitious ideas. And
yes. I mean, it's kind of an epic. Like from where it starts to where it ends, and the amount of years that go by, and
the span of time and the span of space. And
the secret war between the Van Helsing, the high-tech vampire hunters, and
Operation Purge. That was something.
It's great.
And you'll love this. I wrote a first season of episodes for Vampirella, thinking because it wound up being a TV pilot in its own season, the way Black Scorpion earned.
Right.
So I said, okay, Jim, here are the first 20 episodes of season 1, and ultimately, the relationship with the people at Purge, and a new guy comes in who becomes her nemesis, and the season was going to end, or 3/4 of the way through, she was going to be framed for something, was going to be on the run, and the final episodes, Adam Van Helsing finally finds her in this room with this little spaceship that she's created. She's going back to Dracula, and the next season premiere, you were going to go back to Dracula.
That'd be awesome.
Oh.
And that was going to be the hook, right? So I was building the characters and the relationships and the ideas. Meanwhile, it's great because vampires are kind of a minority group on Earth, and there's good ones, almost like the X-Men mutants. You got good ones, bad ones.
Right.
All this political stuff going on, which is kind of interesting, social political stuff. So yeah, there was a lot you could do with it.
But there's lots of fun ideas in it, and I have to
that have been copied over the years too.
Yes.
Oh God, yes. Didn't John Carpenter with his vampires movie have?
I was thinking of yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's true.
And the best imitation of all was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where they took the same notion I just said. Just drink as much as you need to, or whatever. They had the same exact setup in one of their episodes, and I'm going, okay, well now it's done with better production values.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of those ideas.
But the heart is there.
But I mean, like Blade and Underworld.
That's all came later. And I have to ask though about like the her suit in the comic and everything is so iconic. What was the decision on Talisa Soto to change the outfit? Because the outfit's just not the same. Was it just, did they worry about it being too revealing?
It's so interesting because in today's world, where the Marvel comic universe can change costumes and no one will say anything about it, back then, people were very, very, if it's not the costume, I don't want to see it. Wolverine better look like Wolverine. You won't get my bucks. Yeah. But no, the truth of the matter is, she felt uncomfortable in it.
Really?
Come on.
Talisa Soto is one of the most beautiful women who ever lived.
She's gorgeous.
Yeah, she is.
Wear the suit.
Here's the thing. And it seems so kind of cheesy even to discuss it. She was not that well built up front. Her backside is amazing.
Yes, it is.
Her backside was not up to what you would call typical. So in the ribbon costume, she really just felt it wasn't working right, and she really preferred a little different kind of a thing.
Okay.
So
you can pad. You can pad.
Right.
Hey, listen. At least it's still red ribbons on a mostly naked woman.
You know what? I think that there was a way that they could have made that costume work with her body type, and frankly, I think that she gets a bad rap. Because
I think she quits herself quite well.
You look at reviews where they say how terrible she is. I don't think she's terrible. I think she's doing a pretty good job considering what she has to deal with.
She had a certain dignity, a certain classiness to her, which meant that she didn't come off as a typical grade B Roger Corman bimbo.
Right.
She seemed more like someone who smoldered, who was deeper.
Yes,
who was interesting.
She was understated, actually.
Yeah. And on the set, we spoke about her whole approach to the part. And at first, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she has such a pronounced Puerto Rican accent. Is that going to just seem kind of crazy? But ultimately, when all is said and done, even that gave her a certain something
alienness
that
to
I kind of liked ultimately.
It was weird to come in from then you see her parents like, where did this accent come from? Okay. I didn't mind. I didn't mind.
Look, I don't want to.
I'm glad you guys got something out of it because even in its own embarrassing way, there are flashes of imagination of something.
Oh, absolutely. I
agree.
Plus, you had
fun with it.
And so did I. And Roger Daltrey is really fun. I think he's great. But your little touches though, like having the geeky monster loving kid that she meets up with named Forey Ackerman.
That scene is brilliant. That
great.
Scene is great.
And having like Angus Scrimm in there, John Landis in there in little parts. I mean, it's fun. It's fun.
Getting Roger Daltrey to begin with was wow.
Yeah. Was he like into it?
The way the situation worked was that Showtime would demand that the actors be of some importance, meaning that because Talisa had been a Bond girl, et cetera, she was in a higher level. Obviously, Roger Daltrey, being who and what he is, he was a catch as well. Now, Daltrey was interesting because he really got into the part. He really had a lot of fun with it. And we spoke about it all the time, including some scenes that he played where he didn't realize that there were certain thoughts that were coming out that he wasn't even thinking about. And it was just so fun. You'd show, I went down to the set. It was shot in Vegas. We shot at night, slept during. We were like vampires. And how much fun is it to arrive on the set at night and his assistant saying, Gary, Roger wants you to hear the new song he wrote for the film.
Oh my gosh.
My approval of his song. Thank you.
That's awesome. Wow.
Nice.
So I had a ball. I had a great
sure.
time that month when we
Oh my
shot
God. I'm the biggest Who fan ever. And that would have been like,
Right,
spending a couple weeks with Santa.
No, he was great, and he was game, and I like "Bleed for Me," the song that he did create. For
Yeah,
us.
that's great. But I had heard that, like, I think it was Jim Wynorski saying how it was so hot, the weather was bad. And there were some thefts or something happening on the set or something. There was like
were weird things going on. It was not a happy shoot for Jim. I had fun, but he was struggling. Part of it, there were things going on behind the scenes. People, money was being taken away. It was done under horrible circumstances, but
wow.
But Jim sort of also, we were working at night into the morning, and you begin to get really grouchy after a while, and some of the actors begin to forget their lines, and that drove Jim crazy. So what are you going to do? It's not always the most fun thing in the world to make a movie.
Sure. Yeah.
No, and I'm glad that everyone's finding nice things to say about the film. But it's also, look, I don't want to make, it's not the same as Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead is great.
No, it's not.
But this film, look, let's be honest here. Jim Wynorski is not. He's a guy that it's like you don't have a lot of time to make this film. It's like, okay, give me the script and I'll make it as fast as I can. I happened to work with Andrea Risotto, who was the cinematographer on this. Andrea Risotto did a ton of stuff with me when I was at Playboy TV, and the lighting that he would do on these, it was so beautiful. It was so perfect. And, we'd take our time and craft stuff, and he was a fantastic cinematographer. And I asked him about this film, and he had all these stories about Jim and how frustrated he was because it's like, Larry, I had hardly any time to light. It's like, throw a light here. Guys, we got to go. And the problem is, from the very beginning, when you watch the film at the beginning, you'll see a boom mic. You see like a tape lines on the floor. There's some sloppy stuff. And it's like, there's some stuff that's like, Sean, you mentioned that it's ambitious. Yes, I think their script, they were trying to do too much with the budget and the time that they have. And the thing that bugs me is maybe I'm a bit of a Vampirella snob. I mean, when you look at all those beautiful comics of the Vampirella, from the 70s, I expect something a little more glamorous, a little more, I can imagine what a Hammer film like this would be. Now, granted, Hammer had to do films fast too. Yeah. But there was just
it would have
something,
been a different thing. Yeah. If it would,
but just the Wynorski style. And I can't recommend it. I think it's I don't have the same kind of fun. Well, okay. Well,
I would going in and knowing what you're getting into. I would absolutely, because there are so many great ideas. There's so much fun, and that one, it is camp. There is a camp quality to it.
Yeah.
Oh,
and so once you're,
by the way, I'm in the picture.
On board,
I'm in a couple of scenes. I'm one of the vampire chieftains around the table with like.
Oh, nice.
Nice. I'm also the guy that runs out and says, "Sir, helicopters have been sighted." Of course, we couldn't afford helicopters, so I had to run out and say, "Sir, trucks have been sighted coming to."
Well, that's one thing too. Is like it seemed like the optical effects were like almost unfinished. It looks
Jim
like
promised me
that's a temp shot,
Frankenstein
right?
transformations.
Oh,
Instead, we got a little ball of dust that just
Gary,
I said, Jim, is that just placement for where the effect is going to go? Okay,
right.
That's the effect.
Right.
Gary, look, I don't mean to crap all over the film, but it's like, look, it takes a lot of people to put together a feature film. And sometimes, when you're not given the amount of time and the money and, yes, Daltrey is fun to watch. There are neat things about it, but I just wish Wynorski could have been given a little more time, or actually maybe even a different director.
Let me just say one thing about Jim. I've been friendly with Jim apart from this film probably since the late 60s. So he's someone that I consider a friend that comes over every now and then. We occasionally do things. So I try to balance my friendship with an accurate appraisal of what he does. I see the good in what he does, and I see the things that I don't like. But that's true of all filmmakers that I deal with, or that anybody deals with. When all was said and done, Vampirella is a movie that isn't one of his favorites. Part of the problem is because he's just remembering all the tough times he had on it, but it hasn't been released in any kind of a decent form in years. That movie was shot to be 1:8:5. So all the versions you've been seeing, which are square, which show microphone, those things are meant to be cut out. We have not gotten
they should get like a
presented Vampirella. Yeah,
we need a Criterion Blu-ray of Vampirella.
Hey, Sean,
Sean, that's still waiting for that, right?
Sean turned me on to there's a print on archive.org that is pretty clean. And
there was a DVD released too.
Yeah,
way back.
But that was in that same aspect ratio, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been seen. I actually double checked with Jim on that. I said, "Was Vampirella was shot for 1:8?" Oh, absolutely. And we've never gotten to see it that way.
Yeah, that explains a lot.
And that will help the movie. I've always found, generally speaking, well, that was composed for that, so the cinematographer would be a little happier about that. But yeah, it should be seen correctly if you're going to see it at all.
Do you know, today, are the rights to Vampirella still being bandied around?
Aren't they always talking about
it? Seems like it, right?
Vampirella movie.
Yeah,
I read something.
I'm always hearing that, and it would be probably terrible because it would be a politically correct Vampirella. God knows they couldn't get away with it.
That's true. Yeah,
you're right.
It wouldn't be Vampirella anymore.
They would turn it into the Kathy Lee Crosby Wonder Woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
But,
I don't know.
That is one of the ones that I think there really would be a problem because of her look.
I think you're right.
Maybe like an animated version, like an animated. Because you can look the comic book look,
Yeah, the sexy women thing almost like could look like Frazetta drawings come to life. Yeah. You could live action. You'd have a problem, I think.
Yeah.
There's a scene in Vampirella which I think is great, and I've never seen this type of scene in a vampire movie, but I love the interrogation scene. Where the vampires being interrogated.
That was great.
I love
the whole thing. Yeah, I'm going to inject you with the holy water, and this.
Yeah, they're threatening to inject him with holy water,
and that's like scary too.
And the garlic around the head. I love that.
That's great.
Jim directed that scene very well.
Yeah, that's great.
And it was everybody played it well too.
I
think it avoided going into camp. It was as crazy a notion as you could think of. We were obviously doing a takeoff on these scenes you've seen in police procedurals and all that, but it was played straight.
Yes.
Yep. I agree. Okay, well, Gary, I want to talk about another actually feature film that you just recently did, and this was a documentary. I'm a huge fan of the TV movie The UFO Incident. Which was
me too.
Of course, James Earl Jones and Estelle Parsons telling the Betty and Barney Hill story about being abducted by a UFO, and it was always a great haunting film, beautifully acted movie. And Kino finally came out with a beautiful Blu-ray of it, and Gary, you did the commentary on it. But also, as an extra on the Blu-ray, which really could have been just a Blu-ray by itself, is like this feature-length documentary on music composer Billy Goldenberg, which I just found amazing because
he did everything.
He did everything. But this is like a music composer, especially for us monster kids. The era that we grew up in, his music is just embedded in our brains.
Yes, it's always going in the back of my head.
Yeah,
now.
Right.
We talk a lot on this podcast about the era of 70s TV movies, especially the horror and sci-fi ones, and also just a very underrepresented genre on Blu-ray and DVD too. I mean, there's more coming out now. Kino, especially putting out.
Kino's doing its best, right?
They're doing their best, but Billy Goldenberg was a composer who would do incidental music and soundtracks for TV movies and TV shows. Things like Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, The UFO Incident, Duel, Night Gallery, The Sixth Sense, William Castle's Ghost Story TV show, The Name of the Game, just these fantastic
Columbo.
scores. Well, Columbo's the one. The Columbo, something else all these guys know is I am a huge obsessive fan of the Columbo
We all
series.
are.
And
don't just grab that for yourself.
But like it's a
Y'all
crime.
like Columbo.
It's a crime to me that the music from that series is not available because
it's really a major mystery to me because Columbo is beloved around the whole world, loves this character, and the music is so striking. And why Universal hasn't made a deal with La La Land? That's how this documentary started.
Really?
Because let me go back to how I started with Billy. 1969, his first feature-length music score made for TV, Fear No Evil, which was a supernatural thriller starring Louis Jourdan. And it was a pilot for a series. They made another one, Ritual of Evil.
Yes.
And he was basically a psychiatrist whose patients were being beset by demons. That would have been interesting on a weekly basis.
It was great.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, this was the pilot, and it was Billy's first movie score made for TV. And I remember just the opening, which I have in my documentary, with Bradford Dillman possessed by a demon running up and down the stairs of the Bradbury building with these cocked wide angles and Billy's organ music going berserk. And even though I was intrigued by the visuals, it was that music that I said, I've never heard anything quite like this.
Yeah.
And I began to get the sense of like, who the hell is this guy, right?
Right.
I went down to, I lived in Brooklyn, so I went down to Manhattan to the biggest record stores, and he hadn't done really anything. Nobody knew who he was. And then I realized he's one of these new young television composers. And all of a sudden, and this is a true story, I was in the bathroom, doing my thing, and I hear like all this organ stuff, coming from the next room. I said, oh my God, is that another Louis Jourdan psychiatrist adventure movie that I didn't know was on? And I ran out. I pulled my pants up first, and I ran out. and it was a Name of the Game episode. But it was the fantasy episode where Brenda Vaccaro has all these daydreams. And that episode was beginning with Jean Barry in a fantasy that she was having, contemplating suicide and going up on the roof. So you had the organs reaching to the heavens, and it was just astonishing. That music later was reused as the theme for The Sixth Sense a couple of years ago. But at that point, so they're really, and The Sixth Sense was kind of like the Louis Jourdan character. Instead of guest stars that were
Gary Collins
demons, it was guest stars that were seeing visions. But it was kind of the same kind of thing. So at that point, I'm saying, this guy is doing something with his music that is reaching me in a way, as much as I loved Bernard Herrmann and Jerry Goldsmith, the usual suspects of the great composers of that period, there was something about what he was doing that really, really, really got to me. I thought he was my composer, right? Years later, I made a point of connecting with him for as you've seen in the documentary, because I wanted copies of his music. I meet the guy too, but I figured, well, if he's the composer, he should have copies of his music because they weren't released on records. These TV movies, and of course, he did have copies of his music, so I got copies of all that great stuff, right? And of course, then Billy and I became great friends for about 25 years.
Wow!
And as we were, every time I'd come into New York, because he was in California doing all this stuff in the 70s and 80s, and in the 90s, he eventually went back to New York from whence he came, because he was really a Broadway guy. And the Queen of the Stardust Ballroom is probably his most important creation. That was turned into Ballroom on Broadway with the Michael Bennett, of course, line fame producer. So he's really a guy that came from that world. And when he started to become the king of the supernatural, he said, my God, I'm just a little Jewish guy who writes show music, right? But that other side of him, that's why I say he gave you heaven and hell. His music was transcendent, and sometimes you felt you were going into heaven, and other times to the depths of hell. And it was always beautiful. there was an inherent beauty because it came out of him. And he was just a beautiful guy, a great guy.
But when you did the documentary with him, he was in his 90s at that point?
He was in his 80s.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he died at 84 2 years ago.
Right. But I mean, the fact that you had him in this documentary playing at the piano and just talking about his work.
The devil theme, all that kind of stuff.
It's just priceless. Plus interviews you had John Badham, people like Susan Clark, Estelle Parsons, Norman Lloyd, Lalo Schifrin, David Shire. Like you had Robert Wagner.
Yeah, Robert Wagner comes over to my humble little apartment here to do this piece about Billy. I mean, that tells you how much that Billy was appreciated,
Yeah, yeah. He really was in a lot of ways like the soundtrack for 70s TV, like at least for the stuff I watched.
He was the classy side of that. Because even though he did so much work, he was still a quality guy from Broadway and from the higher, because you got to remember, he worked with Barbra Streisand on her early specials and Presley. He was the key guy responsible for Elvis's comeback special. So he was plugged into all of this. And then he just had such talent that he could write everything from spooky movies to Kojak to whatever. And then Columbo was perfect because Columbo put it all together.
Yeah.
It was like he scored the villains. These incredible scores were always these rich, beautiful, but evil people.
Yeah, it was. I always like to call like the procedural moments when you're watching the murderer in the Columbo shows, plan and their murders. The music, the incidental music that would play during that was always so just iconic.
But also the music in those episodes, when the episode would start and you'd have the villain doing their thing, his music would come in, and it was almost like the music was the character.
Yeah.
Following this guy doing his nefarious deeds. Mm-hmm. And it's another thing that I feel when I watch Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. From the very first scene, from the title sequence, that eerie strain that goes right through you, like crawls into your soul and just puts you on edge from the very beginning. And all you're looking at is a cat in a house.
Right.
Well, Billy, one of the things that comes out in the documentary, it's funny you mention this because Billy would basically, his music was usually based on the character. Okay, when he did the Night Gallery pilot, you had all that Roddy McDowell, kind of sounds, right? That fit him, right?
Yes.
And then Joan Crawford, you had these big notes that fit her grand, the way she thought of herself, right? So he got into the heads, the subtext of the characters.
Yeah, he really,
which is what you're supposed to do. Even as whatever kind of artist you are, if you're a writer, you have to get into the head. If you're a composer, you also have to get into their id.
Absolutely.
And he did that beautifully.
Yeah.
Now, one of the great pleasures of my life is that I've managed to become friends with some of these people that I admired so much. Billy is a perfect example. Another one is Joe Smith, the great artist who did all the epic movie posters, Ben-Hur,
gosh.
about him a year ago. He was also a good friend of mine who I worked with. I brought him into Tops. We did different things. But here's a guy whose original posters for like Gorgo,
the Gorgo thing behind you. Yes.
That inspired me, right? And to actually then be friends with this guy and he can tell me about the background of this.
The great poster art is such a lost art now.
Oh, yes, it is.
It's, oh, gosh, yes.
I love all the,
we came out of a more romantic era. And that also meant there was more romance and more melodrama or whatever. This also gave us all these pleasures that are, hey, listen, just the whole art of film scoring has changed.
Sure.
Yes.
What Billy and what all these other people were taught is now considered to be old-fashioned, too much on the money. The filmmakers don't want the composer to be a storyteller because that was part of what the composer was all these years.
Yes.
They want to be the storyteller, and the composer should counterpoint here and there cleverly with music. Whereas years ago, that music was a legitimate, specific part of the storytelling.
Right,
That's considered Mickey Mousing or too much on the nose. Or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard that.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
Which is absurd.
Yeah.
You never hear you almost never hear a straight orchestral score in the classic sense anymore. Now it's very dominated by what I consider to be the Hans Zimmer style, which is just sort of this kind of pounding, synthesized, background.
Yeah.
Which can work for a certain type of film.
A pulse,
Right.
It's a pulse. Right.
And something, anything that makes the movie better, if that's the right kind of soundscape for a movie.
Sure.
I'm thinking of like the score to The Dark Knight, where it was so weird, but it was right for that character and for what was going on.
It was.
Right.
It's so crazy because if you're a filmmaker, you have to keep all that in mind. As much as you may love certain kind of music, it may not be right for what you're doing.
Right.
But now it's gone so far beyond me. I mean, it's not my screen anymore. I mean, I'm going to be 70 years old, so it's a different world, and I don't expect myself to be a part of that now. I'm part of that earlier world. Very proud to have been.
Yes, I mean, you're just the fact that you've chronicled Billy Goldberg's work and career in this movie is fantastic because nobody else has done it. It's like he's a man who deserved to be celebrated.
He was a guy that was great, and also composing for television has not really been covered because there have been documentaries about Bernard Herrmann, about some of the great composers,
right.
But you really didn't have anything about creating stuff for television and how that world works. Right. So it kind of it gave you that as well. No, I'm very, very happy with it. Thank God Kino was able to release it. That actually got it piggybacked off the UFO incident to reach a wider audience,
Yeah. That's
well,
fantastic.
I mean, this being a Halloween episode, here's some great recommendations for films to watch on Halloween.
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid of the dark. You can actually get that on Blu-ray and
that looks gorgeous. That's scanned from the original negative, the Warner Brothers
it's
Blu-ray.
beautiful. I used to have it on 16. I used to have it on 16 millimeter, and I'm selling it now because nothing will top this, And then the UFO incident, which isn't really necessarily horror, but I remember watching that when it first came out, and those scenes are so creepy and so unnerving.
In a way, it's even more than horror because it really happened, at least in their minds.
Right. Yes.
And when she's finally forced to remember when they approach her in the car.
It's so
good. Was very close to the actual accounts because I read all of the books.
Yeah. Me too.
The men in the road.
It was like, no, this man, he's gonna, and it's going, oh my God.
Yeah. No.
Because she's under hypnosis remembering this stuff.
Brilliant performance.
But their relationship, like their scenes together are so beautiful and so good. Like two top-notch actors. I mean,
you're looking at two heavyweights, two incredible performers that you would just want to sit down and enjoy this one and enjoy that one,
Right.
And here they are together.
I know.
And their relationship is like a real married couple. It's not saccharine in any way. These are couples have their ups and downs, and
because both of them, when you think of both of those actors, you think about James Earl Jones kind of laughing and throwing away a little line so naturally. Then you picture Estelle Parsons with her. It's all real.
Yeah.
It's like you can't. It's not actors doing stuff. These are real people. That's why they're so great.
Yeah.
She was a hoot to interview, by the way.
Oh, really?
It was hilarious, Estelle Parsons. Estelle Parsons, she challenged me the minute I came in the room.
Wow.
Please.
Do tell.
I just written or co-wrote this John Travolta racing car movie called Trading.
Yes.
And she was saying, well, what kind of cars were used? And I said, oh, well, this is just kind of, it's not really like Daytona. It's just people. Tell me exactly the car. I said, well, you don't know, do you? And then she would smile, which is another way of saying, I'm going to put you through hell, but that's just my way.
Nice.
She gave me a very good interview, which I'm very grateful for. And she makes that comment about Spielberg, which is great.
It's fantastic. We're
talking about Billy and the impact that Billy Goldenberg as a composer made. And of course, the poignant thing that comes out in the documentary is that Billy Goldenberg was Steven Spielberg's original regular composer.
Right.
The original John Williams, okay? And they did all these things together. The Columbos, Duel, all these things. They were going up the ladder. And then when Steven gets his first big screen assignment, the Sugarland Express, gives the script to Billy. And as Billy says in the documentary, I was so busy with my TV work, and it just didn't sound like, I didn't even look at it. How stupid could one be?
No.
And that's when I come in and I say, that one wrong move, that one wrong decision can change the whole course of your life. Because if he had scored Sugarland, most likely he would have been asked to do Jaws, which is kind of like a Duel at Sea. And our whole pop cultural history would be. And then I actually run a little clip of Jaws with Billy music to give you a sense of what that would be like. Which is something I actually asked Billy, could you write me a Jaws theme that we could get what your Jaws theme would have been? He said, no, John Williams music, I can't. That's his thing. But I did put in a little music, which I pulled from an obscure TV movie called The Harness, which is a great TV film which no one has seen. And the music was so harrowing. In The Harness, it's a scene where Lorne Greene finds his dead wife, and Billy just went all out. It's a great scene. And I said, this will work beautifully for this moment in Jaws. But yeah, everything would have been different,
True.
So this is the man that could have been John Williams. That's another little interesting aspect of the
Right.
So this is a piece of advice to all those young music composers out there.
Say yes to everything.
Right. Well, Gary, being this is the Halloween themed episode, I'd like to know what you do around Halloween. Like, how do you celebrate the season? Is this a favorite time of year for you?
It used to be. I mean, I have to admit, last few COVID years, it hasn't been anything, frankly.
Of course.
Sure.
But no, I used to go back to New York. See, I've been living in California since 1989. But, I came from Brooklyn and New York. So I would go back to New York and Brooklyn twice a year religiously.
Just to get water? I said just to get water. or to get what the other Italian bread, which I can't get out of. I mean, in Brooklyn you have Italian bakeries with these beautiful seeded Italian breads and all that. Can't really get that out here. But anyway, so I would do that, and usually during the Halloween season, I would be back east, and I'd be either at the Chiller Con or different things like that.
Right.
I'm not sure what I'm going to do this year. I mean, I may finally emerge. I've still been in a COVID kind of world. Finally going back to New York next year for my 70th birthday.
So no costumes or anything, no cosplay or...
Well, for years I would do that, even years longer than I should have. I remember the Society of Illustrators used to have a Halloween show in New York, and I would go with a creature mask or something. Then I found an easy Halloween costume. When I did Dinosaurs Attack, the trading cards, I myself played Elias Thorne, the professor who starts all the trouble and brings the dinosaurs.
Okay.
And that meant all I needed was a white lab coat and me. So that was the... But I'd have to pull out a trading card. So this is who I am, right? That was the cheapest costume, really. Years ago, I mean, I don't really do the cosplay that much anymore.
But when you were a kid, though, look, man, you grew up in that classic time, the Monster Kid generation. So did you go, hey, Mom, let's go and get to Woolworth and get a Ben Cooper costume? Did you get any of those cool vintage costumes?
I'll give you some stories. Okay,
please.
First of all, when you're really little, you're at the mercy of whatever your mom is going to do.
Of course,
yeah,
so true.
I remember when I was really, really little, my mom got me this kind of cat costume. It even had a tail. Now, what made matters worse is that it was so wonderful back then. The local theaters would sometimes have Halloween shows, and all the kids would get up on the stage, in their costumes.
Ah,
And then the kids in the audience would either go, yay, or boo, or whatever.
Really? Boo.
Yeah, yeah,
They'd
yeah.
boo? They'd
Yeah,
boo.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I got a lot of boos with my little cat costume. believe me.
I'd be
Well-deserved
devastated.
boos.
Oh.
But it didn't take long for me to buy my own masks. And I remember I didn't have the money to buy the Creature from the Black Lagoon mask that was $34.95.
Yeah. The
right.
John Post
Yeah.
ones.
John Post,
Yeah.
right.
That mask was taken from the original mold of the underwater head that Riku Browning wore. So
Yeah.
it wasn't even just a mask; it was an original movie prop.
Yeah.
They used it on the Munsters as Uncle Gilbert.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
In any event, I couldn't afford that when I was a kid, but I could afford an imitation called Monster Fish, which was a cheap. It was over the head.
Monster
And I
Fish?
remember
I'm a
putting it
monster
on
fish.
and doing something with my hands to make them claws and chasing kids around the block.
Nice.
Wow.
And one of my mother's girlfriend across the street saw this person chasing kids and said, "Oh, isn't that a shame that that person is chasing those kids?" And my mother's like, "That's Gary."
Nice.
Oh, that's
So I believe it. I really got into
Monster
it. once I got
Fish.
older,
I have to look for that.
Yeah.
So was it a knockoff of the creature, or was it someone's interpretation
It was
of
an
the?
interpretation.
Okay.
It was a scaly, amphibious looking monster.
Okay.
Interesting.
And it was scaly all over, which looked kind of cool, and it went over the head. So that kind of
Oh, that's always good.
yeah.
Oh.
Gary,
Covered your whole head, which was kind of nice.
Larry's like our resident like creature expert and creature collector. He's been featured on television on Collector's Call with his creature.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
with this creature.
Yes, that was me.
So
And me.
So you're telling
okay.
so you're really piquing his interest though in this because Larry, have you heard of this mask before?
No, not Monster Fish.
Monster Fish? Yeah.
What
You gotta
he's
look that
done,
up.
Even draw
Sean.
it.
Now what
I
he's
remember
done,
it.
it's like now I'm going. Oh, I gotta find this Monster Fish. I gotta find
exactly.
this.
So
no-
Larry, you
Yes.
have Fish Monster. You have that.
No,
mask, but you don't.
but for Gary, so I have the original, the 1970s creature costume in the box, and I have the 1980s, the Collegeville, and
With the big
I
wide
have-
pants.
Yes, and well, no, and the 90s, and the more recent
There
one.
was
So
grunge with flannel.
I have all of those creature ones, but I've never heard of the Monster Fish.
You gotta get that now.
So I'm gonna have
You
to.
gotta
I'm gonna
remember
have to.
that there were so many. There were mask companies, and when they were making spooky things, it was logical to let's do an amphibious monster.
Right.
Sure.
Sure.
So it was really, but that was the closest I could get as a kid to having a creature mask.
Well, you're lucky because I didn't get those when I was a kid. For me, it was like, well, here's Lancelot Leake's Secret Chimp and Mickey
Long
Mouse.
stockings
That's it. So it's like I had this idea to do my own creature costume, and I told my mom I was gonna use lettuce. Lettuce. I was gonna like put a rubber band, and my dad's all, "You're not using lettuce," because we had a large family. We can't.
Yeah, no, that's food.
That's food.
It's the lettuce monster.
Yeah. I just picture a tragic scene from East of Eden. Just oh no, it all wilted.
So of course, all of these creature costumes that I have, obviously now I can't fit in it. I'm gonna have to get
Just do it.
like a.
They sell corsets very cheap.
No.
on eBay.
I'm gonna get. I have a friend who's got a kid mannequin. I'm gonna get maybe a couple of these kid mannequins and put them to so I can live through the mannequin.
It's gonna be weird. You walking down the street with your kid mannequin. When the cops pull you over.
Matt,
Hey,
he'll be on roller
where are
skates.
you going with those?
He'll be on roller
What do you
skates.
plan on doing with those, huh?
Okay, all right. That's very funny. That's very.
I'm going to be the monster fish officer.
Yeah,
sure you are.
I really started something with that monster fish.
Now I'm obsessed with it now.
See,
I can't rest. I can't rest now until I find this damn monster fish now.
But Larry, what was wrong with us? Like, I don't know about James and Sean, but I was the same thing. Like, I never got the actual costume that I wanted. I don't know what was happening.
It was.
I'd want Frankenstein, and
Matt,
I'd get like a circus
Matt, the reason
clown.
why is it was always left to the last minute. That's why.
Okay.
Right.
I was fortunate. I was so freaking lucky. I got Frankenstein that one time, but then
I got the mask alone. That was it.
Well, that's just I got the mask and the costume, and then you look at the costume. It's got the picture of Frankenstein on it. It's like I don't want to. That's stupid. But it's like it was always
like there are so many choices, and like you wanted the monster, like I want to be the Wolfman. Like, instead, you get like Archie from the Archie.
Yes.
Steve
Who
Austin.
wants Archie? Well,
I know.
But you were lucky. You had monster fish, Gary. That's
at least you got monster fish.
True. I think
but nobody could afford
kind of lasted a number of years, and then I seem to remember the last time the rubber got all melted, and that
it deteriorates. Yeah.
Hey, that's the design flaw. No, hey, man, none of those things were made to last a lifetime. So to actually find something like that,
I gotta tell you this.
Tell me.
I own about 5 different versions of the land head that Ben Chapman wore, and probably about 4 different versions of the underwater head, because back in '74. Another good story. I collected 16 millimeter movies. The only way you could own movies back then was to be a 16 millimeter collector.
Yep.
And it was kind of against the law, sort of, but nobody really cared. And the studios would allow their 16 millimeter prints to be filtered out to collectors. No big deal. Mm-hmm. But then collectors got greedy, and The Exorcist would open on Broadway. Someone would take the 35 millimeter print, bring it down to one of the film labs, make a negative, and then all of a sudden they were selling dupes to South Africa. And
wow.
Okay. So they then brought in the FBI to crack down on film collectors. All of us innocent little nerds who were collecting our favorite movies, right? Ahead of the curve before the whole world started doing it, okay?
Sure.
Right.
But we were like, they had our lists. We subscribed to the Film Collectors Registry. They had just lists. And they went down the list and subpoenaed all of us.
Really?
Here I was, probably about 19 years old. And they come to my house, an FBI guy comes to the house, scares the hell out of my grandma.
You're kidding?
And there's a subpoena for me to fly on a plane to California to appear before a grand jury investigating film piracy.
Oh.
And this was like a nightmare, because it's like, oh my God, other people down the block maybe were busted for having grass or whatever. No, but not big time. I'm going to I'm subpoenaed by a grand jury. All because I love monster movies, right? So I first of all, I tried to fight it. I'd never been on a plane before. I'd never been out of Brooklyn before. And just the idea of going to California for something like this. And I went to legal aid, got a lawyer, and they couldn't stop it. So I had to go out there. They connected me with another lawyer out there. And my lawyer said, plead the fifth to everything. So they're asking questions like, Mr. Gerani, do you like science fiction movies? And I said, well, ridiculous.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
What do you do to make money? Because I wanted to get you to say that you're selling prints of movies and you're making profits, which I wasn't. I was just collecting them, right?
Right, enjoying them.
And breaking the bank trying to pay for the things I was collecting. Okay, so they said, what do you do to make money? I said, well, I write on the backs of trading cards, which got a big laugh in the grand jury. And I had to explain the difference between a baseball card and a movie card. And then, is there anything else that you do, Mr. Gerani? And I said, well, I write about monsters, the monster types. And they all cracked up at that. And then I seized the opportunity, and I said, all right, the truth is out. I like monsters. Lots of people do. And they laughed and they loved it. And they could tell after I was just a kid, I was just a harmless idiot. Of course, then the DA said, oh, would you call When Worlds Collide a monster? Because I had it in my handwriting, enclosed at $150 for a print of When Worlds, and he shoves the letter in my face. I refuse to answer on the rap.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
that sounds surreal.
They eventually realized I was just a nerdy fan. They let me go. P.S. The DA was later convicted of all kinds of crimes that were unrelated to this at all.
No.
Oh my gosh.
But the beauty part of it, 2 great things came out of it. I was in California for the first time, and I called up Joe Stefano. I just cold called him. I knew he lived in Beverly Hills. In the airport, there was a phone book. I looked up Joe Stefano.
Oh my God.
We had a great conversation. And next time you're in California. I said, I'm going to come back next month, just because I want to come back with a clear head and enjoy myself.
Oh my God.
Okay, so I came back, saw Joe Stefano it was great. But the ultimate point of the story, even I began to forget where we were going. I went on the Universal tour, and they still had the old makeup lab up at that point.
Oh.
And they were selling off the original mold the Creature from the Black Lagoon head, the land head, the Riku Browning version,
Right.
The UFO incident head, the face
The
piece
alien?
from Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman of the werewolf face, and the headpiece from Frankenstein Meets the Wolf, all off the original mold. So I bought the creature head instantly, whatever, and that became I still have that head. It's about 1973 when I got it, so
Right.
it's kind of deteriorating a little, but it still looks good.
Sure.
And I've gotten a few more of the heads made from that mold. And of course, the underwater head looks totally different because it's got the open eyes. And
Yes.
they're both wonderful. So yeah, over the years, I've kind of had them in one form or another. Come a long way since Monsterfish. Right?
I mean, talk about taking advantage of a very harrowing and ridiculous situation.
Yeah, well, I don't have those in my collection, but do you have the original AHI Creature from the Black Lagoon?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh.
What is it? I'll write
That's
that
how
down.
figure.
It's
It's a toy.
It's an action figure. It's this big. It's from AHI, also known as Azrak Hamway, and it's the jointed one. I have both the jointed one and the female version.
Wow.
Great shape too.
See, I thought you were going to ask something else, Larry. I thought you were going to ask, like, well, have you ever been subpoenaed by the grand jury for movie poster art simulation? And
no.
Another little quick story attached to that. That time, my parents sort of disowned me. What was their son doing? Well,
Oh my God.
Okay. Meanwhile, they were enjoying the benefit of me running the movies in the basement. But all right, we'll put that aside. But that very week, like about 4 days before I had to take that plane, the headline of the New York Daily News: FBI stamps down on film piracy. Roddy McDowell's collection seized.
No.
Okay. Years later, I worked with Roddy McDowell on a movie that never got made called H.G. and Me. He was going to play H.G. Wells. And we spoke endlessly about the madness of what that DA put us through with our collections. We were supposed to give them our collections. I was supposed to take my whole collection from Brooklyn and bring it to California. That didn't happen. Roddy did get his films back. Roddy was a great guy.
That's what we heard.
We've heard so many great stories.
Things. Yeah.
Tom Holland has gone on at length about how great he is, and
he was great, and what a wonderful actor, and just a really a fun guy. He would have been a great H.G. Wells. I mean, in a way, if you think about Malcolm McDowell in Time After Time, Roddy could have worn the same outfit.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Absolutely. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, I have to say, though, really, at that time that you were going through this with the films, really, there were no bigger fish to fry?
Yeah.
I was one of many, many people who were subpoenaed. As a matter of fact, someone I knew and the person had already gone through it, a friend of mine, he said, this is what they're going to do. And he was right. The FBI will have you come to their building, and there's this room where they're going to give you the third degree. And he described it to me, this little cubicle. And I saw but I showed up with a lawyer. And when they saw the lawyer, those pink-faced FBI guys looked so disappointed. It was like, I saw the room where I was going to get that third degree.
Wow.
But I was scared that, yeah.
But I mean, like, when I mean bigger fish, I mean, like, I don't know, the mob, serial killers.
But the mob wasn't doing it. It was just other who might have even been film fans. So, we'll make dupes, we'll make extra money, and God knows.
Wow, that's amazing.
Who sold this stuff were collectors too. It shows you how important it was to own a movie, because up until that time, movies hold us in their grip, and we had no control over them. Whenever they were on is when you would see them. But once you owned them, they could dance to your tune, and you could watch them whenever you want. And all of a sudden, the relationship changes a little. So we had to be able to own movies and watch them whenever we wanted. And of course, now that's just something we take.
Yeah. Take it
Well,
for
I
granted.
mean, one of the
Yeah.
things I still have on 16 millimeter, I have a good amount of 16 millimeter films,
Yeah.
but I have a lot of the 16 millimeter Castle films because that was like, that was the only way that we could own a movie back then.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
10
you're
minutes at a
right.
time.
Right.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Right.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Showing
Gary's
a
showing
Dracula
us
Super 8.
some of his own Super 8.
In the
Yeah.
early 60s, that was the only game in town, and
Right.
luckily most
Right.
of our parents had 8mm projectors, so you
Right.
could sort of maybe
Yes.
get away with, getting one of these or two of those, and in many cases, it was the first time you ever saw the movie at all.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
The creature which they call Creature from the Lagoon. They left out the black part in the Castle original release.
Because of the FBI.
They actually released that in 8mm and 16mm in 1957. And then gradually Castle Films added more. So for me, a kid in the early 60s, these things were out there.
Yeah.
And it was going to be years, let's say, before the creature would turn up on TV.
Yeah.
You could see a little brief version of it, silent, on the Castle
Sure.
Film 8mm
Yeah.
collection. At least it was better than
Yeah,
nothing.
you'd put some music on, and you'd get
well,
like,
we had that too.
and you'd get the
there was,
monster stuff at
Dick
least. The 8
Jacobs
minutes of
scenes from
monster
horror
stuff.
movies, which famous monsters used to sell in their back pages.
Oh yeah, Captain
Right.
Company. Yeah.
And that was great because that actually had the music from The Creature and Horror of Dracula, a whole bunch of different films.
Right. Right.
I remember that was and they had the little movie posters on the front of the album,
Yep.
which back then you didn't
Yes.
see movie posters that often. It was
Right.
great to see
That's
them.
right. Wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
Well, guys, this has been great. Gary, you've just been
yes, it
amazing
has.
This has been
helping us.
fantastic.
I mean,
Wonderful.
yeah, you've just done so much, and just hearing all this stuff about Halloween and your movies, this has just been a blast. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really
Please, and come
amazing
back
career.
anytime, please.
Now,
Yeah.
now is there anything that you're working on or something that you've got going on or coming
Developing?
out soon for our listeners to look forward to?
Well, I would just say right now, the things to look for would be my book about Joe Smith, which is called Epic Art, The Art of Joe Smith. And he's the great poster painter who did Earthquake, Ben-Hur, Gorgo, Horror
Nice.
Dracula, a million great things. And that
It's a
book
beautiful
is
book.
currently available. And the Billy Goldenberg documentary, which is on the UFO incident, Blu-ray,
Fantastic.
it just came out, a few
Yep.
months back. And I'm still doing things with it, trying to get more interest in it for some awards and this and that kind of thing.
Nice.
So that's kind of really key. In terms of the other things I'm working on right now, I'm always working on one thing or another. I've got a couple screenplays which I'm playing with, but very specifically, I wrote the first book. It's going to be a 5-book series called The Card King Chronicles. Now, I am the Card King, meaning that I've written, edited, and art directed more trading card sets than any person in history.
Oh.
I don't know.
Nice.
So people have been saying, you've done hundreds of these things. Put it down. Okay. And then I realized it's got to be a decade by decade thing because there are hundreds of these things.
Yeah.
So the first one is Volume 1 is the 70s, Volume 2 is the 80s. Volume
Wow.
1 I finished. And right now I'm trying to figure out if I want to sell it to a publisher or if I just want to print up copies and sell them directly to fans.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
They begin to appeal to me, I mean, because you go with a publisher half the time, you don't know if they're even being honest with you. You're losing money.
Right.
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 Well,
That's what I know
whatever way you go,
Yeah.
way you go, Gary, I'm going to get those books. So
Me
That's
too.
that's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
kind of like an untapped area too, as far as putting it in a chronicle of.
And the history of it all.
Yeah.
The non-sports entertainment trading card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. And, I provide a whole little history of it too. But just the things that I was asked to do at Tufts, because I was there every day, 9 to 5. The other creative people there would come in a few days a week, but I was the only one who was there. And they made sure I was always working. I'm not going to be sitting there twiddling my thumb. So they shoved everything at me. And what an amazing learning experience. I got to design storyboards for commercials, all these kind of wonderful things. So that whole era of Tufts and the work I did there, as I'm writing these books, I'm saying, this is kind of cool, and I'm glad I'm finally getting it down.
Do you have copies of all the cards you worked on? Like,
there was a time when I kept an uncut sheet of everything I ever did, but then it got ridiculous. So, and they used to send me a case of it. Yeah, I need a factory because, like I said,
yeah.
Or you need some very good friends who happen to do a podcast.
There you go. Okay.
Wow.
Well, Gary, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
fantastic. I mean, just been
wonderful.
Just
and
a treasure
if you guys want to do
delight.
it again on related subjects, just give me a call. We'll figure
Absolutely.
it out.
We'd love
Fantastic.
to.
Yes.
Well, guys, what do you say we raise our glasses and give
Please.
a toast here? Sean?
I'll raise my can of Diet Coke, too.
There you go.
All right.
Sean.
To Halloween Hullabaloo and Gary Gerani.
All right.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Time for a listener shout out.
Shout out. Hullabaloo shout outs.
Hullaba shout out.
This goes out to Ed Stastny, who goes by the name Star Stew on Instagram.
That's right.
Star Stew!
And Ed has provided us a very fun surprise. He's listened to our Kaiju Obscura episode.
That's right.
That we did back in the day. And he was inspired to craft drawings of each one of the obscure kaiju that were referenced in that episode.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's doing one drawing at a time, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
he's like Busca and Gappa and
Guilala.
Yeah.
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 Doesn't
And they're great.
They're
They're
great
great.
little drawings. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very talented.
They could
And,
be trading cards.
That's right.
Oh.
Are you listening,
Gary
Tops?
Gerani? Are you listening? So thank you, Ed. We really appreciate it. Very flattered.
Oh,
that you were so
yeah.
inspired by that episode, and that episode was a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward every time to see the new drawing. It's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Keep
you.
coming.
And once again, another shout out, 2 in a row this time for Jim Jenkins in San Diego.
Oh my God.
Jim, you're a shout out hoarder.
Wow. he might be able to get the threefer.
Whoa.
Uber listener Jim Jenkins, who we gave him a shout out last time for introducing us to our guest.
Yes.
Gets a shout out this time for buying yet another Monster Party t-shirt
All right.
on our eBay store.
He's,
So Jim,
he's keeping us alive. He's keeping us afloat.
That's right.
yeah, really.
Yeah. I mean, he's
So-
responsible for that carton of mac and cheese every 3 days that I eat.
And he's also responsible for buying out our supply of t-shirts. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
Get them while they're hot on our eBay store, which is called Monster Party Store on eBay. Just go on eBay, look for Monster Party Store, or go on eBay and type in Monster Party Podcast t-shirt or cap, and you'll find it there. We've got the original Monster Party logo t-shirt that glows in the dark, still
True.
available in a few sizes, right?
Yes, we definitely have
Right.
large. So if you're looking
Right.
for a
We do have
large, and I believe we have
Mhm.
some extra larges as well.
Cool.
And in far more quantity, we have the t-shirt that we recently made up for the last Monster Palooza.
Mhm.
And that is a variant of the kaiju designed by Derek Robertson, which is
Right.
beautiful.
It's got
we have-
green. It's green. It's sort of a green take of the artwork, and it's great because you can use it for Halloween and then maybe for Christmas.
That's right.
Oh.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the classic Monster Party cap.
Oh, the cap.
With
I don't know anything about this cap.
you know, it's a beautiful item.
Yes, is it?
Larry, what can you say about the cap? You love the
What did you
cap.
say,
You
Larry?
always wear it.
So
You're-
Larry
you're-
knows about it. Okay.
Well, the
Larry-
cap is beautiful. It's a high quality cap. It has
Yes.
over 16,000 individual stitches in it where the Monster Party logo is. This is not some little patch you just put on. This is
no.
individual stitching. It's a beautiful high quality cap.
So, hey guys, this is not your typical sweatshop type of artistry here. We're
That's
talking.
right.
This is a higher end sweatshop.
No,
Yeah,
it's
These
not.
kids
Just, no.
These kids get at least 2 meals a day.
No, ours are made by
get a cot.
Oompa Loompas.
No, no, they're not made by
Oompa
Oompa
Loompas made them.
Loompas. No,
Yeah.
they're not.
They are.
No. The
Yes, they
stitching
are.
is
No,
done
I trust Sean.
here in the
Sean's
USA.
never lied to me, and you have.
Don't you remember that grand jury scandal with the Oompa Loompas? Or
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oompa
they
Loompas were
came
making
down
hats.
and
Yeah, this is very funny, but it's a high quality cap. Okay, moving on.
Jesus Christ! Wow. Hey, thanks, Scrooge. All right,
yeah.
let's move on to something else.
Happy Halloween.
Wow.
What
All right.
do you
Go
get
ahead.
when you embroider a cap?
Okay, come on.
Oh,
Come
that's
on.
it. You did a song. Come on.
Okay. We've also got the Monster Party cloth PPE face mask.
Oh, that's
Uh,
right.
And last but not least, the Monster Party shot glass. A little beautiful little shot glass with the Monster Party logo on it and a green tint on the bottom. But
Yeah.
perfect for toasting our guests at the end of each episode.
And it's also, if you buy 2 of them and you attach some wire to them, you can wear them
Mhm.
like glasses and you can pretend to be the kid in Pumpkinhead.
That's right.
Ooh,
That's right.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah, you're welcome for that idea.
And if you purchase Monster Party merch on our eBay store and also happen to be a Patreon member, we will throw in free surprise goodies, courtesy of Biff Bang Pow Toys and Jason Lindsay and creature creator extraordinaire Ted Haynes, friends of the show,
Oh, two
That's right.
two magicians, really, I like to call them.
magicians,
That's right.
and very, very generous friends.
They
very
are.
much
They
appreciate
really are. They give and they give some more.
That's right.
So Patreon, what is this Patreon I keep hearing about, Matt? What's
Yeah,
that
it
all
sounds
about?
very mysterious. Sounds like Draculon, Patreon. Like, what's going on?
Hmm.
It is. It's very Lovecraftian. There's a Cthulhu-esque element to it. It's kind of a secret society,
Ooh.
and it's been rumored about for years throughout the world. And we did the research and we gained the arcane knowledge that got us into this place where we set up a platform where you can get bonus material from Monster Party. You can get
That's right.
our shows, our special shows like Larry's Toy Time and Monster Party
Ooh.
Masterpieces, where we
That's right.
show our films and our early film works. And that's a great time. And then, we just concluded our Japan video log, but all those are still up, even though we're not adding more of them. We have them all there. So once you join, you'll have access to all of that stuff.
The whole
Ooh.
adventure.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Mm.
And then my stepfather-in-law, he is always donating these wonderful collections of science fiction, classic science fiction and horror stories. His name's John Bordeaux, and he's a lovely man. And he does this just because he loves us and by proxy loves you. So, wow,
Right.
that's a lot of stuff. And there's more. And we're always thinking of new things to provide, audio episodes and whatnot. But yeah, it's just going to keep coming, and you got to be part of this.
Well, it sounds amazing, but honestly, guys, everybody's talking about inflation these days. I heard Halloween candy is up 13%.
Is that true?
I'm stressing out. This sounds a little too good to afford, to be honest.
Okay. Well, what you could do is you could go into CVS or Walgreens and take some money and maybe buy a little candy corn or maybe some fun size candy bars. But instead of buying that, you could take $5 and join Patreon. $5. That's all it takes.
Wow,
What?
man, you can't get an off the rack Vampirella costume for that price.
No.
That's for sure.
Although for $5, I will make you one.
Okay. Okay.
And I think you'll be pleased. You know how they say it's like spaghetti straps? I make it out of spaghetti. So it's serving
Oh,
2 purposes.
wow.
Well,
Awesome.
Yeah.
okay. Well, that's certainly a deal. So how do you join this Patreon?
Well, it takes yet more arcane knowledge that I will tell you. It's less arcane now that I've worked it out. But all you have to do is you have to go to Patreon. You find Monster Party. You click join. You follow the instructions, and then you're in. Then you are part of the Cthulian circle that will then gain
Ooh.
access to the realms of the netherworld
Cool.
Ooh, wow.
and shit.
Nice.
Well, let's remind our listeners that you can find us on social media, on Facebook at Monster Party TV, And YouTube is also Monster Party TV. And oh, hey, by the way, since it's Halloween, one of our very earliest episodes on YouTube is Halloween themed. So you might want to go check that out.
That's right.
Yes.
It is,
yeah, check the archives.
Yeah. We are also on Twitter at Monster Party HQ. Instagram is also Monster Party HQ. And hey, whatever platform you're listening to us on, please take a moment, find a way to let us know your thoughts, write us a review, send us your suggestions. We are very, very interested to know your thoughts, and we will read them on the air.
That's right.
And not only will we read them on the air, but we will then give them out as treats on Halloween to trick-or-treaters. Now, the downside is that we're going to get a lot of really pissed off trick-or-treaters, but it's a trick or a treat.
And those trick-or-treaters are going to learn a lot about our podcast.
Yes,
right.
and how wonderful we are.
And isn't that the important thing?
Isn't that really the spirit of Halloween? On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Strothe.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
And have a hullabaloo of a Halloween.
And if any trick-or-treaters come knocking, be careful.
One of them might have a subpoena.
I'm Shawn, by the way. I'm the one you've been talking about on Facebook with. This is Matt, Larry, and James.
Hi there.
We're the quartet that is Monster Party.
And I'm the heart of Monster Party.
Okay, no, wait.
Are you?
Okay, so that was Shawn. Now, the heart of Monster Party, the other fellow with the creature shirt, because you see, I've got my creature shirt
Of
too.
course. Nice.
Yeah, and his name again is?
James is on the end. Larry's with the pumpkin, and Matt is with Monster Party in the background. Yeah.
Just think, Larry Pumpkin.
I'm the company
Larry
man.
Pumpkin.
The
company man.
Put together in my mind. There you go.
But
so going over some of the things you've done, it's been a glorious 48 hours for me.
Yeah. No, literally. I mean, we'll talk about it on the show. But I know we're doing a few years for a long time. I mean, really going all the way back to, and we'll talk about this, going all the way back to 1977 and a certain book that came out.
Sure. Oh, yes.
Because there was nothing like that at the time, but we'll go into that. So
yeah, it's one of those like in the, the 5 books that shaped us kind of a thing,
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
Great. No. Because I wanted it to have that kind of effect. Because when I was a kid growing up and the Carlos Claren's Illustrated History of the Horror movie book came out, that had a tremendous effect on me. And that was the first book about horror films, big screen films.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to eventually do one on the small screen because it hadn't been done. And I was so happy that my book kind of had that same effect on
Absolutely.
the next generation.
Yep.
So that makes me feel great.
Cool, man. Cool. And it's also very appropriate that this is kind of like our Halloween episode. So
No, this is not
There's
kind
lots
of. It is.
It is.
It is, sir.
Yes.
The pumpkin. Pumpkin
Yes, exactly.
Shawn.
Well, Pumpkinhead also. Is perfect.
Yeah, well, hey, save that.
Hey, I don't
it.
Hey, we all have that
Everyone's
figure.
here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yay!
Oh,
Nice.
What a great looking monster. One has to admit.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
And imagine
It's
how much
it's
fun it
iconic.
is to
see,
grow up loving The Creature from the Black Lagoon and the Outer Limits monsters, all these things, and then to kind of do your own.
Yes.
Well, she's kind of like a
save that sentiment for the show. Let's
Yeah, I was just gonna say that sounds so great. You should do that on the show, perhaps.
And
We will start very soon, but I need to do a quick adjustment on my air conditioning or talk about the heart of the
please.
show. You will see the heart attack of the show.
Okay.
No.
I will be right back. I will be right back.
Hey, Gary, is that an original Gorgo poster behind you? What is that? That black and white on the door?
Yeah. It used to be. I had the originals on because I did this. I got very close with Joe Smith, who was the illustrator.
you did a book on him. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a book on him, and I had a lot of his original art. I had the Triffids and the
Nice.
those are now giclées because at a certain point when I needed some bucks.
Hey, man.
Sure, we all been there.
Hey, man, we've all been there.
Great art that has come into my life and then left. Sometimes it comes back.
Right.
But you had it. You had it. You can say it was mine at one time.
And every week I used to have cocktails with the artist, Joe Smith, and he'd be telling me all these stories. So I had the real guy who created it as a very good friend too. Which
Nice.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're all huge collectors too. We all have our rooms, our collections of all different kinds of stuff. But yeah, I mean,
you never stop. No matter how old you get, you keep doing it. I know.
I know. I know. It's an obsession.
They just keep on coming out with more and more cool stuff. So
especially now. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I hate to check out like Sideshow these days because there's always something.
Oh my God!
I'd love to have that. Oh,
yeah, I know.
You know, they went through. When they started, the stuff was great. Now there's mostly a lot of maquettes now. You know that I always loved all the figures, man.
The first generation of Universal monster figures from them were just amazing.
There was that period about, what was it, like 15, 20 years ago, where all of a sudden, there were these 12-inch dolls and smaller, different configurations.
But
my God!
But Gary, the thing that irritated me is why did they stop? They couldn't get the rights to do Colin Clive as Dr. Frankenstein. They couldn't do Dr. Pretorius. They couldn't. There are other variations that you could do. Hey, where's my Julie Adams doll? Where's that? Where's my Richard Carlson?
That would have sold out instantly too.
Oh no, Gary, you're not thinking. No, you don't. We only make 2,000. You make 10,000 of them.
Gary
10,000. No, well, I'm just trying to think marketing, man, marketing, and they'd sell.
You know what? No, they wouldn't. Larry, they will. It's going to happen.
Yeah, they're going to put it out. They're going to put out a figure, and
it has to have her special swimsuit.
You're not going to find the limited edition Julie Adams at the Target. I'm sorry, it's not.
Yeah,
no, I know that.
It's going to be like a specialty, company.
You're not going to find it at Aha's or Special Gifts.
This is what I'm afraid of, Gary. Just bear with me. This is what I'm afraid of. Okay, so you've got the Mego guys are all on. Hey, we're the big thing now. They're going to make a cheap version of Julie Adams, and the swimsuit's not going to be great.
And you'll still not be happy.
I'll get it, but yes, you're right. I won't be happy. I want that 12-inch version that I can lay her over. I can't. I can't make a doll. I can't make it.
Get one of your special effects friends, Gary. First of all, I need to, as a preamble to what's about to happen. Larry has a slight problem with communication.
There's no problem.
There are two modes. There is conversation. Then there's I would say I'm going to add 3, okay? Just to be nice to Larry. There's the heart of the show where he comes across as this lovable teddy bear, when in all reality that is as far from the case as possible. And then there's, you said something I don't agree with, so my counter argument is loud.
As you can see, we're very loose, kind of party atmosphere.
No, this is great. This is the kind of thing that generates some interesting thoughts.
Exactly.
Interesting thought. Did you hear what our guest said?
Yeah, not decibels. Thought.
Right.
No, look. Hey,
listen. The Julie Adams action figure is a great idea. I mean,
it will happen. I know it's going to happen eventually.
Sure.
Actually, you know what where that could be pushed? A Barbie version of Julie Adams from Creature. That's
true.
He is.
That's part of their ongoing.
No, Gary, you are right. They did the Star Trek. They did the Star Trek Barbies. They did a Vina Barbie. They did a Tippi Hedren Birds Barbie that I have still mint in the box, my friend.
A Fay Ray Barbie and a Julie Adams.
I have that too.
That's right. Do
you have that? Wait, do you have that, Gary? Do you have that?
This is not a contest, Larry, of who has what.
I'm just saying. Mint in box.
Created Pumpkinhead, okay? Wins. He wins. If they do the Julie Adams Barbie, do they have to do the Creature Ken? Because
they have to make a Richard Carlson. They have to.
Do you want a Richard Carlson and Richard Denning Halloween figure.
Hey,
Well, I do want Richard Denning.
I'd also be happy with a Laurie Nelson Barbie
That's
figure
right.
to go with the slightly revised creature.
And then just for a little variety, we could do, Lucas, the captain.
Lucas.
Oh, I love to have a Lucas figure.
Nestor Pava. Nestor Pava. I
Yeah.
love him. And you know what? You could use him for, isn't he in Tarantula, John? Sean?
And mole people. Yeah.
And mole people. But yes, Nestor Pava.
Mighty Joe Young, too. He's one of the three Stumblebums.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. Wow. See, we're going deep now. We're going
great
deep.
minds. We have to make some calls. But maybe we should start
calls
our
that won't
show.
be answered. But
Yes,
calls
maybe we should.
calls
maybe
in
we
any
should-
case.
Maybe we should start our show first. Hey,
Yes.
Gary,
Gary,
I don't know if you're familiar with the show, but just to let you know, what's going to happen is Matt's going to open the show with like his little creepy voice, and then what happens is we say what the show is. We introduce ourselves, say what the topic is, and then we're going to give an introduction to our guest. And Sean is going to introduce you. And once we give the introduction, then we're going to go to town.
That's right,
Sean.
Yes, and this is like not live or anything. We're going to edit this for any
So if you
pauses or anything.
So Gary, if you say all of a sudden that Wynorski, he was such a dick. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Then we'll stop. We'll rewind.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Full of Jim Wynorski stories if you want them.
Oh, good! I can't wait.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, Ellison stories if you want them. Too.
Oh my gosh! Yes,
but I'm just saying
it all.
Gary, I'm just saying, if you say something you feel like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, no problem. It's not live. Matt will get rid of it. Okay.
Also,
and then you can go back and go, hey, that Wynorski was a great guy. So
sure. No, it'll be seamless. It'll be seamless.
Yeah.
And then
I'll provide your voice later.
Gary, at the end, we typically go for maybe about 90 minutes. If you go a little longer, that's great. But at the end, we kind of say, hey, is there anything you're working on that you want to plug?
We want you to plug anything you got going on.
And now, if you say something like, yeah, I got something coming out next week, don't say that, because we don't want to timestamp it quite like that. You could just say my next thing is,
we'll be
next spring.
Right. We'll be posting this episode late Tuesday night next week, right before Halloween.
Yes.
So, so it'll be very seasonal.
And then also, just to let you know, right now, our little banter here. Normally, what we do is we take this and we put this after the end music of our podcast. We throw this on as like a little bonus. We haven't said anything, 60 minutes worthy so far that you would feel uncomfortable. I don't think so. If it's okay with you.
Oh, sure. No.
Cool. Okay, great.
I thought this was it right now anyway.
I know many people do. And many people hope that. And yet
they're just so damn charming. That's
happens.
What it is. Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's go. Ready?
And so Gary, it's this whole Halloween. Well, Sean is talking.
He's aware of Halloween.
Yeah.
We're doing a Halloween episode. We're going to talk about Halloween and him.
And Gary Gerani. Yes, exactly.
Yes. Great. Sean, just want to say that's 2 hours. I just wanted to let Gary. You've been great. I just wanted to let you guys know it's 2 hours.
Wrap it up, and you can plug anything.
I think we've covered.
Here's what
covered everything.
Here's what we're gonna do, Gary. We're gonna thank you for your time, and then we're gonna ask if there's anything you're working on that you can plug. Okay.
But by the way,
yeah,
in a Halloween episode, we got the grand jury in this. What's more scary than the grand jury?
That's right.
I gotta say, right.
That's awesome. That's been fantastic, man.
By the way, did I tell you that both my grandparents were called for jury duty? It must have been a grand jury.
Oh. Happy Halloween, everybody.